All right, let's get going. Hi, everybody. My name is David Diamond. Thank you for being here today. If you think I look familiar or sound familiar, then it's probably because you watch all the airport board meetings. So I'm not entirely sure this is going to be as entertaining as an airport board meeting tonight, but we're going to try super hard. All right. Tonight, we've got the agenda for tonight. The opening remarks, we're going to hear from Mayor Zabriskie and Supervisor Bullock from Nevada County. We're going to have information sharing presentation from some Nevada County employees here. And then we were going to get on to the Q&A. I'm volunteering tonight, and also coming right over here is Shauna and Allison also volunteering to help tonight. So they're going to have a microphone. I'm going to go around and try to get to each of you, and if they cannot get, then they will, if I cannot get to you, then they will help me out. The purpose of tonight's meeting is information sharing. It is to respond to questions and concerns and to hear solutions that you might have. You can see over here the graphic for the speaker piece, which maybe a lot of you know about, and I'm not going to go through it. I'm just going to summarize. We live in the most fantastic place on earth, and we are all neighbors. And I just hope that tonight we treat one another as such and respect that there are people concerned and there are people misinformed and there are people here who really want to make sure everybody understands what's going on and make the best decision. In that spirit, I'm hoping that we have that cooperation when we get to the Q&A portion. Tonight's input will be used answering questions, hearing your concerns, learning your ideas to improve operations for the facility if the facility goes forward, gather feedback for future efforts to address homelessness in our community. Most important, see that little bottom part of the slide, no decisions are being made tonight. You're here for a good reason. Nothing has been decided, and your input will matter. So it's not too late, and you are in the right place if you want to talk about this. Now, I want to bring up, should I use this one instead? Do I sound better through this one? Oh, yeah, okay, well. I want to bring up Jan Zabriskie, who is the mayor of the town of Truckee, and Jan has a presentation, wants to talk to you a little bit, and then he will bring up Supervisor Hardy Bullock. Jan, where did you go? Here you go.
Well, thank you very much for the applause. I hope that doesn't turn into both applause and booing as we proceed through this. So I hope you can hold your reactions till after you leave this evening. I very much appreciate seeing the turnout. I think we all do, as well as seeing people coming from county staff from the other side of the mountain. It shows a real interest in our community and its well-being. I'm going to talk about supportive housing, a brief history of supportive housing, and then how supportive housing aligns with the policies of the town. And this is supportive housing for the most vulnerable members of our homeless population.
Go to the next one.
Get rid of that one. Okay. Since 2007, communities throughout California are required to allow homes within residential zones to be used as supportive housing. In Truckee, that would include the Armstrong Tract and the neighborhoods where both Hardy Bullock, Supervisor Bullock, and I live. This law was based on the societal and economic benefits that had been shown to occur dating back to the 1970s in New York. Today, there's enough permanent supportive housing in the state of California to house 75,000 individuals. Supportive housing exists in Placer County and on the west side of Nevada County. It is important to recognize that the success of supportive housing depends on the nature of the support. It's reflected in the town's development code, which states that housing must be linked to an on-site or off-site service that assists the residents in being able to remain in the housing, improve their health status, and maximize their ability to live and work in our community. A fundamental policy of our town seeks to ensure an adequate supply of housing for all segments of our community. We have neglected the homeless. Supportive housing is one way to make up for that. Safety is also a core priority of the town. National surveys throughout the nation have shown that supportive housing reduces crime rates. In South Lake Tahoe, the police chief reported that complaints about the homeless went down about 60% after they established their supportive housing program in that community. Fire prevention is also a major concern for town government as well as our community. And just as hunters and weekend campers can light a fire that gets out of control, the homeless can do the same thing, whether they're trying to stay warm out in the woods or trying to cook a meal. By providing housing for the homeless, we reduce the risk of both crime and fires. I now just want to finish by talking about our homeless action plan. I was appointed to the homeless action, no, let me say, what do we call it? I was on it, the Homeless Advisory Committee. Thank you. I was by the town council, and with a group of nonprofits and other governmental agencies, we spent 18 months developing a homeless action plan to address using 3 years of data and with a 5-year implementation plan. It is a housing first plan. It reflects the advice of experts and numerous research papers that said housing is the best way to reduce the impacts of homelessness, both on the homeless and on the communities in which they live. The other point I want to make is we determined that the most vulnerable in the region, including North Shore and Truckee, is about 44 homeless. You can cut it in half and say it's about equal on each side of Brockway, and so it's about 22. We really need about 22 beds for permanent supportive housing to take care of the most vulnerable among us. Now, there's a number of reasons we do that, but let's just talk about the economic reason. The experts determined that the community cost of homelessness is $3.1 million per year. That's attributable to emergency room visits, hospitalization, law enforcement. You can go on. Those are the two big ones, but there's other costs as well. In comparison to that $3.1 million per year in costs, upfront costs to serve this gap population in Truckee would be about $2 million. I'm going to turn the mic over to Hardy Bullock now, but I will be here after the meeting to answer any questions and talk with you about anything having to do with this. I've only scratched the surface of my presentation, and I know I've taken up more than my allotted time. Thank you. Oh, and here is Supervisor Hardy Bullock for Nevada County. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Yeah, I appreciate it. The clicker. Here, we'll hope it works. Yeah, I just wanted to give, let's quick forward here. My name's Hardy Bullock. I'm your 5th District Supervisor for Nevada County. I just want to give a kind of brief introduction, and then we'll get on to a couple things I'd just like to say, and Jan said much of it, but I just wanted to let you know I'm honored to serve you. I've served one full term, and I just started my 2nd term, and it's an absolute honor to be a part of this community. I've lived here my whole life, essentially my whole life. I was a planning commissioner for the town of Truckee, also a planning commissioner for Nevada County. Started a couple nonprofits here and there and worked on boards and done all those community things that we love to do here in Truckee. So I'm part of this community, and I say that because my kids were raised in Truckee. They went to Discovery Preschool in Armstrong. They went to Sells, they went to Truckee High. So I understand that neighborhood and I'm familiar with the concerns you have and the cares you have. I wanted to just thank you for coming because you care, and you're here because you care about your community, and I care about your community, and we're here to listen. I'm here to listen to you, take input, to make the decision together with you, alongside you. We understand that you need to be heard, and this meeting is here to collect data, collect your insights, answer questions, categorize that, and bring back information for you. It can be a little confusing, but I just want to give you a little kind of summary of who I represent in the process, because I am your elected representative representing you in this project for Nevada County. So first, the Armstrong neighborhood residents. I'm here to represent you, your concerns, your cares, things that you want to see changed, support of the project, opposition to the project. It's all included in that. Our Eastern County community, our Eastern County District 5. District 5 runs from Nevada City to the state line, north to Sierra County, and south to Placer County. There's 22,000 people in there that I represent. Some of you are here tonight. Many of you who aren't here tonight have called me, written letters to me in opposition to the project, also in support of the project. It can be confusing, and I know a lot of people went to town council to share your concerns with the town council members, and that's great. I support that. We have a great working town council. They care. I care too. So we share and have joint constituency with the town of Truckee. Again, I represent the people that are here in the room tonight. I also represent the people that are not in the room tonight for District 5 and all of Nevada County. I also represent Nevada County as a jurisdictional entity, because this is a Nevada County project. So when you're talking about the staffing, the funding, the use of resources, and the votes required to allocate those resources for my colleagues on the board, that's the role I play here tonight as well. Last but definitely not least, I represent the community stakeholders and that have worked for these community solutions. Some of them are in the room tonight. If you work in this space, you've helped people that are homeless, could you please raise your hand for me? These are people that have represented, worked for, and supported that population. Thank you for your service. And obviously, I represent the unhoused community members who need our help, our community help, all of us in this room and people who are not in the room. I speak for them when they can't speak for themselves, and it was noted, I was in a meeting today, and they said, hey, these people don't have connections. They don't know town council members. They don't know me. They don't know you. They don't have any connections. Some of them don't have roots, and they're doing the best they can to get by. So I speak for them here tonight. See if I can get this to go. There we go. The goal is really, I wanted to take responsibility for our lack of outreach associated with this project. There's some reasons why that occurred, and we're not going to spend a lot of time, but I did want to give you some background information. I want to provide some accurate information to you. The flyer that was posted around the neighborhood is inaccurate. There's disingenuous information. This is not a homeless shelter being installed in your neighborhood. It is a potential project in the inception phase. The project is not authorized. It hasn't been funded. We have not purchased a house. We've not made a final operations plan. We have no grant. Just to make that very clear, there is nothing completed on this project yet. This is one-time use of Proposition 1 funds from the state of California. We plan to do door-to-door outreach. We started with that outreach. We talked to one person. 24 hours later, there were flyers around the neighborhood. And since that time, we decided to have a community forum, which is a great idea. We're here to speak to that. But I just wanted to let you know, many of you have called me and emailed me. I take great pride in responding back to my constituents. And so many of those calls I have deferred to this meeting. So when we're done with the meeting, if you still have questions for me, if you still have concerns, I'm happy to meet with you personally. I'm happy to jump on a call with you. Our staff members in the room tonight, you can get their numbers and we'll talk with you. Just want to let you know we're here to talk with you and provide information. You know, one thing that came up, and we've discussed it a lot, I've heard a lot about it in different circles, was, hey, we haven't heard anything about homeless services here in Nevada County or in Eastern County or in Truckee. And that Jan mentioned the Truckee Tahoe Homeless Advisory Committee, which we were active for about 14 to 18 months. If you or anybody on your staff was part of THAC, can you raise your hand? So these are the best and brightest in Truckee that came together to try and solve an unsolvable problem in our community. That report is done. It's in draft format. It's going to be presented to the town council and also to the board of supervisors for adoption. While we haven't discussed this specific project because of the timing, we have talked a lot about homeless services and the provision of services here. There were 17 articles in local media sources: the Sierra Sun, Moonshine Inc., the Town of Truckee newsletter, Truckee Tahoe Community Foundation newsletter. We actually did a radio spot on KTKA radio with Supervisor Gustafson and myself, where we described this solution and many other solutions to the problems we face with homelessness. We had presentations at Good Morning Truckee, the Community Collaborative. We did resource sharing meetings, and our staff went to chamber town talks to describe what we hope to bring to our community. And I'm sorry about the timing. So I'm going to be a little personalized. I'm going to personalize this a little bit because I think that's why you're here, because you care about your personal neighborhood, your home, your people, your family. I believe in housing for all community members at every level. Some of us don't have the same type of housing. We have different types of housing. And I support that, and I think it is the right thing to do for our community, the town of Truckee, and our county. I've met a lot of people in my course of service to Nevada County, and I'd like to talk about Tom Durkin. He's one of the biggest advocates in the county for homelessness. We had this policy that we were propagating at the county for tiny homes on wheels, where you can take a tiny home and you can park it on a piece of property and you can live in it. So we had a whole community meeting at the board meeting, and we had 90 minutes of public comment, and people came up to the podium like this in front of us and told us about their journey, right? About them being homeless or being close to being homeless, or just finally found a home and got out of being homeless. And half of the people in this room look just like the people in this room. They're people that are teachers, that are preschool people, that work in the service industry, that work in trades, that may be unemployed. They may be living for certain reasons, either social or economically disadvantaged conditions, that put them in a position where they couldn't find the home that they needed. They're people just like us. And I'm just going to ask you tonight to drop the bias, drop the stereotype, and open your heart to think about the people that we serve looking just like the people in this room tonight. A couple days ago, I realized that my wife and I bought a house about 3 years ago in a really nice neighborhood. And it's a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house with an ADU in a different town. We gave it to a nonprofit to provide housing for homeless youth. And over the last 3 years, I have not gotten a single complaint. We've not heard from a single neighbor who wants to talk to me about why we have kids who are homeless living in this house. In fact, the neighbor next door is a retired CPA, and he is taken akin to these kids, loves to talk to them, has this great relationship with them, and has created this whole multi-generational connection to people that live in that house. The house has flipped, I don't even know, 4 times. There's been probably 18 different people living there. They come and go. The neighbors don't have any problems. We haven't had a single issue. If you drove past the house, you would never know. I believe in the work of our partners. Many of them are in the room tonight. I believe in the Truckee Tahoe Homeless Advisory Committee. I think we did good work. It's not perfect. And I'm going to raise my hand and say, if you're looking for every single answer tonight, you're not going to find it. We're not going to answer every question about the Hope Ridge house. And we're not going to lay every single fear this community has. It's never going to happen, but we have to do something. And THAC did that. It's in a report. We did the best we could, and we were open to your scrutiny, your criticism, and your comments. And we'll be flexible, we'll change it, and we'll grow together. Kathy Foley coined this term. These folks are your friends and neighbors. I think Kathy's here. Kathy, hi Kathy. If you know Kathy, spend 5 minutes with Kathy and you'll immediately want to help her doing anything she's doing. These are people just like us. They're people I grew up with. They're people I know. They're people you know. They're people varying degrees of reasoning why they came into a homeless condition. There's 2 stories actually that have kind of been brought to the surface in the last 48 hours. They're on a piece of paper back there. They're people in our own community telling their story about why they're homeless, and I'd like you to read it before you leave. This is a one-time grant funding opportunity for us. My job is to pull resources into our community and from the state of California and Fed resources. The tightening budget, the restrictions on federal resources, the restrictions on state budgets are real. This is likely the last chance we're going to get, the last shot we're going to get to pull down that state money and bring it back here to Truckee. I'm almost done, but there's some opportunities we have to improve our community. We've talked about some of these. Obviously, the threat of wildfire. The past fire was started by a homeless warming fire, cooking fire. I can't even count the number of fires in Western County that have occurred based on people cooking and staying warm. There is a direct community cost that Jan outlined for us so well. That's police, fire, EMS, the hospital. Every part of our community spends money on this. You may not see the money, but your tax dollars are going to it right this minute. The community character. How do we want Truckee to look and feel? We spend a lot of time talking about the Truckee Way, which thank you for reminding me as part of this process. We talk about the community character, and Jan talked about the community values at the town of Truckee. There's a poster over there that talks about the council goals. We have our own objectives at the board. What do we want our community to look like? Do we want to be remembered as a compassionate, empathetic community that helps people? It's got impacts to the town. What's the reputation? What's our reputation worth as a mountain town? We're affluent, we're educated, we're capable. We spend a lot of time in the outdoors and a lot of money recreating and spending time and enjoying ourselves. Can we afford to help 6 people and put them in a house and get them out of the snow? There is a lack of future funding. This is the last opportunity we may have. There's business impacts. I don't know if the Chamber of Commerce is here or Downtown Merchants Association. They're the other people that call me all the time and want to talk about this. They do not want to see it. They don't think it's good for business. That's a condition that's prevalent across all of California. But I ask you, where do people go? If they can't be in the public spaces and they can't be in the business spaces and they can't be in residential areas, they can't live in an industrial complex. What do we as a community intend to do to solve this? Ultimately, it's the human experience. People are going to suffer based on our decisions, and it's a really, really tough decision. I take it very seriously. It's one of many tough decisions that we all make as leaders in the community, but that's the reality of it. People will suffer if we do not take action. And if you read the media or you pick up any publication, you'll see that homelessness is growing. Unfortunately, the inflow of the need is greater than our resources. And you can look at communities like San Francisco or Los Angeles. Unfortunately, the Metroplex areas are highly affected, but there's other places in California that we know that the condition grows and grows. So how do we get through it? We can do it together. I believe we can do it together. CSAC, the California State Association of Counties, I got on a call. They understand 58 counties, and I asked their president, I said, when you look at Truckee, what do you see, Graham? And he said, the only way you're going to solve it is with the town, the county, and your community, period. The only people that have been successful in this space have linked those 3 things together. These are the partners we need to employ. Sacramento County Mayor Steinberg and Rich Desmond, the chairman of the board. I know Rich really well. They did a great job. They finally came together and solved something. It's not completely solved. It's not perfect. It's not done. It's the human condition. It's the nonlinear human path. It's never going to be perfect, but we can strive to get there. So these are the people that I think we could bring together to solve this problem. I'm going to be here after to answer your questions, and I'm available at any time. My card's on the back. If my mobile number's on there, you can call me or get a hold of me, but I'm going to be here tonight. Thank you. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, I skipped one step.
Ted and Lisa.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me. There's 2 people I want to give a little bit of time to talk, and then we're going to get on with it. Ted Owens is here in the audience representing Tahoe Forest Health Systems, and then Lisa Swarthout, District 3 Supervisor in Grass Valley as well.
Good evening, everybody. First off, I'm going to introduce myself as representing Tahoe Forest Hospital, but then I have a second part that I'd like to cover. Tahoe Forest, I've represented on the THAC for the last 18 months. I was very honored to do it, and it was a very educational thing, primarily because I had a family member that was unhoused. So I wish I'd known what I learned earlier. It's unfortunate. Sorry. The hospital is very supportive, not specifically on this project, but on supportive housing as a concept. It's one cog in the wheel of a solution, getting people off of the street and in a safe environment. And I'm glad that the hospital was mentioned because the hospital is impacted, as you may know. The hospital will serve anybody that's ill, broken, hurt. We admit and we treat without regard to who they are, their ability to pay, sex, creed, color, doesn't matter. And that's part of our mission, and we're proud to do it. However, if we don't solve this as a community, the hospital is a natural place for people to go. And it's a big challenge if we have people that are looking to the hospital to spend the night, to have a free meal in the emergency department, because it conflicts with the work that is going on very often, especially if they're not emergent. We do it, but it's not the solution. So we do need to look at that very, very carefully. And so I'm going to take my Tahoe Forest hat off for a second, and I want to talk about something that's truly unique. I had Hardy's job, some of you may remember, several years ago. I served 2 terms as District 5 supervisor. And so I want to say thank you to Hardy, and thank you very much to the staff. And I know you're going to hear from Supervisor Swarthout, who I've known for 25 years, in just a moment, and I'm glad that she's here. This is unprecedented. Truckee has always had to fight for its fair share. This is an opportunity to achieve fair share, more than fair share. I've not seen Nevada County show up in this way in the 35 years that I've been around, including my time on the board. And so that's why I really do thank you, Hardy, and I thank Lisa for participating tonight. If we don't find a way to capture this kind of an opportunity and put it together collaboratively with the town of Truckee and all the other players, the hospital, the school district, all the other agencies, as a practical matter, if this opportunity goes away, it will be decades before an opportunity like this comes up the hill. Let me tell you why. Every day that Hardy goes to work, he is in a 4-to-1 situation. He represents the largest district, Eastern Nevada County. He has to be engaged up here with the local politics and engaged in the local politics down the hill, where the other 4 county supervisors serve. It's always a challenge to fight for fair share up here. You've done a great job, and I don't know how this is all going to turn out, but I just want to appeal to you that this is truly an opportunity to try and seize the day on, whether it's this or something else, but don't lose the opportunity. It won't come back. It won't come back easily. So with that, I'm going to sit down. I used to be accused of, being addicted to the microphone. It's true. It feels kind of good. But with that, I think I don't know if is Lisa ready, and I'm going to turn it over to Supervisor Swarthout. And good to see you.
Thanks, Ted. Can you hear me? Can you all hear me down there? Thank you. Thanks, Mandy. So, so sorry I could not be up there with you all. I'm a flatlander, so I don't drive in the snow. So I appreciate you allowing me the opportunity to speak with you a little bit through the Zoom process. I just want to say that to all the people that are there who are experiencing, unknowns and angst for this process, I've been through it, lived through it, and am very familiar with permittive supportive housing because I actually have dozens of these types of properties and facilities located in my district. While District 5 is the largest district, District 3 is the smallest district, but on the western side, we have a lot of the infrastructure. So we have sewer and water, and so it's a kind of a natural for this type of housing and any type of supportive housing. I also have a lot of subsidized housing, low income housing in my district as well. So I am very aware of kind of what you're going through and have faced it previous to serving on the Board of Supervisors for the last few years. I was on the Grass Valley City Council for 16 years, so was really involved with the city in making the decisions on how some of these projects were going to move forward. So basically, what I wanted to say, you're very lucky to have Hardy as your supervisor, because he really does care about what's happening up there. He is definitely making sure that the eastern side of the county gets its fair share of dollars contributed to projects like this, which is really important because, as Ted said, it has not always been fair. So I'm really happy to share that perspective with all of you, to know that this is really, it is unusual to see this kind of collaboration and cooperation between all of us moving forward with a project like this. And then also, I'm here to answer questions and just to kind of talk about the experience of living close by to supportive housing, because not only have I been involved in helping, locate it, I also live in the city limits of Grass Valley, so am surrounded by it, and have had very little to no issues or problems with the permanent supportive housing that serves in my district. When I was on the city council, I think in all those years, I got one call from some neighbors of a home that were concerned about an issue. And here's the beauty of it. When you have a neighborhood issue, your responsibility or what the government's responsibility really is not, there isn't any here. It's like you have a problem with your neighbors. It's a civil issue between you and your neighbors unless it becomes a law enforcement. If you have an issue with somebody or a housing that something that is permanent supportive housing, there are resources, there are people to call to take care of the problems that you have. I made 2 phone calls, one to Phoebe Bell and one to the director of AMI Housing, and the problem that I had went away within a day and everybody was happy and it all worked out. So while I completely understand the fears and kind of the apprehension that people might have for this type of housing in your neighborhood, as a person who's lived through it, I will say my fears have always been very unfounded. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to stay on this call, and I'm happy to answer any questions that might come up throughout the presentation. So thanks for the opportunity to address everybody.
Thank you, Supervisor Swarthout. Okay, so before we get to the next section, I just have a question. How many people here have a question that you want to ask today? Okay. In order to get to everybody, unlike a town council meeting where you get approximately 3 minutes, we are going to have 1 minute. So if you've got a longer presented, excuse me. I'm going to get all Kamala. I'm speaking. What we want to do, and we're going to try to help this right now, we want to hear from everybody. We're going to hear from Nevada County, 2 people from Nevada County right now. So one of the things I want to do when we get into this, so they make sure that they cover it, is I want to do a really fast lightning round. Show me your hands if you've got a topic you want to make sure that they cover in this next section. What's your topic?
I want to know about the potential side of the project, because I have information that's not potential.
Potential in what way?
Hardy Bullock described it as a potential project.
Okay, we want to know about the status of the project and how potential it is.
How about just the safety of the neighborhood, the preschools in the neighborhood?
Safety of the neighborhood.
What neighborhoods are you looking at? Is this going to be in Martis Camp, Tahoe Donner? Like what? Yeah, what neighborhood?
Which neighborhoods are we looking at here?
Verifying the supports that the residents will be receiving.
Verifying supports for the residents.
Follow through.
Follow through.
I'd like to know if anyone that has supported this project lives in the Armstrong Tract.
Okay, anybody supporting this project living in the Armstrong Tract? Let's get a few more.
How you guys make your selection for spending this money on this particular property versus a larger property with more beds in it? How do you guys explain that?
Okay, how the selection is made for this property versus another property. Since you know my name, what am I?
I'm psychic.
My question to Hardy and these boys is they know,
we're going to get to the questions. Just topics that you want they want to cover.
I want to know how you're going to vet these people if the prison system is releasing on weekends downtown, and it seems like you're going to get a few of these in these institutes.
Okay, how we're vetting people for this. Okay, thank you. All right. Couple more up here.
The title is Advocates for Mentally Ill. Is mentally illness a requirement for housing?
Mental illness, is it a requirement?
Eviction criteria.
Eviction criteria.
Is the library that's going to be abandoned something that they could put this at, close to the cop shop, the hospital, and all of that?
Okay, do we have other alternatives for the facility?
I want to know what the definition of community is, and is Truckee, Grass Valley, Nevada City considered to be one community, or is Truckee separated because of the infrastructure in western versus eastern Nevada County?
Okay, how do we define community?
I'd like to know what a successful person looks like who lives in this house and what happens to them.
Okay, what does a resident look like who lives here?
Mine follows up on that. Is this co-ed, and will children be living there?
Okay, well, we have children. Is it co-ed?
What has happened to our homeless community resources, such as the warming shelters downtown and at the courthouse? Why are those not available anymore?
Okay, what has happened to the existing resources? No, we're just as a reminder, this is not your Q&A. We're going to get that, but this is just topics we want to make sure our two experts cover in the next section. Do we have a topic that has not been covered yet?
How do you define success?
How do we Okay, that's define success.
I'd like to know what mental health support is going to be.
Okay, what is mental health support? What mental health support is going to be?
And will sobriety be tolerated or required, or what is the standard for drug use and sobriety at these places?
Okay, what is the standard regarding sobriety? Are you writing fast enough?
Sure am.
Okay.
What defines supervision and support for the members of the home?
What defines supervision and support?
Yes. What does liability look like if it goes south?
Okay, what does liability look like if things don't go great?
Why aren't the people moved to where the services are instead of moving the people to where the services aren't?
Why are we not moving people to services versus moving people to where services are not? All right. Okay, two more, and then we'll get into the session.
What's the probability of finding the person to run the home?
What's the probability of finding the person running the home?
Aside from the residential analysis, which I'm sure you guys did, what was the analysis done on the businesses next door, including the facility with children at them?
What were the analysis of the nearby businesses and the impact on them? Okay, Ryan Groover and Phoebe Bell. There they are. Look at them. They were right up here in front. They've got the next part of this, and we're going to hope that they cover at least some of that, and then after that, we will get to Q&A.
Hi, I'm Ryan Groover. I'm the Health and Human Services Director for Nevada County. Can you hear me? Soft-spoken, so let me know if you're not hearing me. And we've got Phoebe Bell, the Behavioral Health Director for Nevada County, and I think a lot of these questions we are going to get to in this presentation. Promise we're not going to linger on these slides because we do want to get to the Q&A section, which I know that's why a lot of you folks are here. So, but we did want to provide a little bit of information that addresses some of these questions before we get into that. So first of all, again, I won't linger here, but want to call out that a lot of people in this room have been working in the homeless space for many years. You know, people may have heard of the point in time count where nationwide people count the homeless and identify how many there are in each community. So in Truckee, that started with specific numbers for Truckee in 2009. People mentioned the warming shelter, why isn't it here anymore? But so we've had a warming shelter. Kathy Foley has been a hero in setting that up. Day services came to Truckee. During COVID, it moved to the Vets Hall. And then very recently in 2024, we had the first edition of permanent supportive housing in Brown Bear Studios in Kings Beach. And then, as was referenced by both Hardy and Jan, the first regional vision for homeless services in the TTHAC plan came out just recently this year. So that's dynamic and has changed. So the warming shelter and the day services lost their location. They're no longer able to be operated at the Church of the Mountains. They also lost the operator. North Tahoe Truckee Homeless Services is no longer able to operate a winter shelter. So those great things happened and no longer are available in Truckee. To put a little finer point on the TTHAC plan, the regional action plan, so in answer to what is the community, we recognize that Truckee is not part of the community of Grass Valley and Nevada County, that it's a Tahoe Truckee community. And that's why many stakeholders came together to form the TTHAC, to get together and talk about these issues, identify gaps, and formulate a plan. And so that plan is available. You can find it on the table up there. It has guiding principles such as regional collaboration, centering compassion in our approaches, housing solves homelessness, and doing nothing creates impacts. All of those have been addressed. And it has focus areas which you can review in more depth at your leisure. Like Phoebe to talk a little bit about more of what homeless looks like in Truckee.
So these slides hopefully are going to answer your questions, or a lot of your questions. I'm sure we're not going to get all of it, so think about what else you want to ask when we get to that. But we really tried to listen to the many things we've heard leading up to this meeting in terms of concerns people have. So some context. What does homelessness look like in Tahoe Truckee? Why do we need a service like that? We heard that from a lot of people. We have a lot of homeless people in our region. I think what's unique about homelessness in Truckee is it's more invisible than it is in some other places. Many of our folks camp deep in the woods, others sleep in their vehicles, and we don't necessarily see them in the same way that we see people when we go to urban areas. And so that makes it easier to not think there's as big of a problem here. When we look at some of those services that Ryan was referencing, we do see the need appear. In the last year that the warming center was open, the emergency warming center, almost 80 unique individuals were served in that service. And in the last year that the day resource center was open, almost 200 unique people were served in the course of a year. So the need is out there. I think another very invisible and unique part of homelessness in Truckee is that it's particularly deadly. We live in a very extreme climate. And for me personally, I first got involved in this topic probably 15 years ago now, when I learned one morning that the previous very chilly evening, a person sleeping in the lobby of the Deerfield post office froze to death in that lobby. And I could not believe that I lived in a community with so much wealth, so many resources, and we were letting people freeze to death in our community. And so that's when I personally got more involved in this topic. So another concern that definitely have heard loud and clear is there are no services for people. So why would we try to open a supportive housing program? And I think similarly to the experience of homelessness being a little bit invisible in this region, also the public safety net is a little bit invisible. I am the behavioral health director, and we run a very robust program here for people that qualify for it. It's a very small subset of the overall population. You need to be on Medi-Cal, and you need to have pretty significant needs. And so most people in our community don't qualify for the public behavioral health system, and so it's not really on people's radar in the same way. But here's what we do have. We have a psychiatrist 1 day a week. We have 3 therapists. We have a full-time nurse who works in this program part-time. We have a case manager. We contract for outpatient substance use treatment. We have linkage and connection to inpatient substance use treatment when needed. We have crisis services, including emergency psychiatric inpatient hospitalizations when needed. And we have homeless outreach and case management services. It's pretty robust. Last year, we served 300 people just about with those mental health and substance use services. So for the people who need them, those services are there. They're not perfect. I will work all day long to try to make them better, but they are there. We do have those services. On the substance use side, we also have a really important partner in Tahoe Forest Hospital who runs a really excellent outpatient and medication-assisted treatment substance use program. And I think in the last 6 months served almost 350 unique encounters. So also a pretty robust program. The magic button is not working. There we go. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, and I want to reflect on what Ted Owen said in terms of access to services in Truckee versus Western County. So in Western Nevada County, we have around 221 people who, or beds any given night at 18 sites for various types of supportive housing. Currently, there are 0 in Truckee, so there's a clear disparity. We've heard loud and clear from stakeholders in the community in TTHAC and other places that we need to address that disparity. And so that's really where we're coming from with this project. And that picture up on the screen is a picture of one of those homes. Often they blend into the neighborhood. They're in a residential setting like what is proposed in this case. So.
Another piece of context, I think I've heard from a lot of people like, why this? Why not something else? And the reality is you need a full continuum of services and support in a healthy community. You need, up at the top there, I'm sure most of you can't read that from afar, but the top band says prevention, rental assistance. In a well-functioning homeless services system, you have funds available to help support a family who's on the verge of losing their housing. And last minute, let's bring some money to the table so you don't become homeless. If somebody does become homeless, you have a variety of options for people to land in depending on their needs and situations, ranging from short-term interim beds to permanent supportive housing beds to long-term affordable housing solutions. Supporting all of that, you have housing navigators, people that help people get into housing, and you have housing support, supportive services that keep people in that housing. So this project fits into a vision of a continuum. It is not the whole continuum. It does not solve every problem, and it does not address every need. It addresses one small piece of a spectrum of needs that are out there that we hope eventually Truckee is able to address. So a little bit more about what is permanent supportive housing. Jan referenced this a little bit, but it is a very evidence-based approach. There is reams and reams of literature documenting the effectiveness of permanent supportive housing. There's sort of 2 key strands to the idea of permanent supportive housing. Strand 1 is about cost. The main reason people don't have housing is they can't afford it. And that's particularly true in California, where the cost of housing is very, very high. So supportive housing assumes that the cost becomes affordable to that person through subsidy. And then secondly, it's about supportive services, and we'll talk more about what those look like, but that's a key aspect of a supportive housing program being successful. Somebody said, what does success look like? Success looks like stability. It looks like somebody staying housed, staying stable, not being arrested, not being hospitalized, not having problems in the community. Some people that might include going on and being employed and living in their own independent housing that they pay for themselves. For other people with disabilities of various kinds, it might mean living in a supported setting for a long time or living in a subsidized setting. But eventually it looks like stability. That is success in our book. So diving into the Hope Bridge House more specifically, can't remember if this is you or me. You.
So something I want to mention here, we didn't need a plan to tell us that we need permanent supportive housing beds in Truckee. There are 0 in Truckee compared to the large number that we have in Western Nevada County. We didn't need a plan for that. One of the things that is central as Nevada County has been expanding access to resources like supportive housing and other treatment resources over the last several years of increased grant availability is you have to have that right opportunity in terms of the funding being available and a property that's appropriate and feasible for that. And so that's not a broad, like, we're looking at all these properties and selecting the one that's going to be perfect and we have the money ready to go. That's not how it works. You have a need, you identify a property at the time when you have the funding, and that time when we have the funding is now. We have Proposition 1 was passed by the voters in March. That's over $2 billion in funding for this type of housing. The funding window already opened. It's a first come, first served basis, and it's expected to be open for 2 to 3 months, and we're expecting a high number of applications across the state to access that funding. And so it behooves us, if we want to have more housing available, that we need to act quickly. And so the specific parameters that often apply to grants, and specifically in this case, you need site control and a willing seller. You need relatively affordable site. So there are caps on the per door cost you can have for an application like this. And you need to have a site that you can utilize by right generally, because if you need to go through a process to get a change in the use, a zoning change or a conditional use permit, that's often not feasible in terms of the time frame. So those are the parameters that go into selecting a site. Yeah.
So diving into how this house will work, and I know this is where a lot of the questions lie, So first off, the house will be managed by an organization called AMI Housing. This is a longtime partner of Nevada County Behavioral Health. They run a number of facilities for us at the other end of the county. They also work in Placer County and have facilities throughout Placer County, including in Kings Beach. They're a great organization. They have a footprint in Truckee, so this is not a down-the-hill organization. The oft-referenced Kathy works for AMI Housing, as do 2 other full-time people and another part-time person. So they have 3.5 full-time staff in Truckee providing support and services to people experiencing homelessness. People will pay rent at this house. They pay 30% of their income. When people come in, sometimes their income is zero. They have zero income at all. And during that time, their rent is zero, because 30% of zero. But the goal is to immediately start working on getting an income source in place. And that's what case managers work on, those kinds of things. Maybe the person lost all their identification. Let's start with getting a birth certificate so you can get an ID so that you can apply for a job. Some people, like I mentioned earlier, may be at a point of needing to be on disability due to the impact of their serious mental illness. If they're on disability, let's apply for disability so you have an income and you can afford rent in the future. That's the idea of disability. Whatever their income is and whatever revenue we're able to generate from that rent, the rest of the cost is covered by the county to make that house pay the insurance and the utilities and all those things. Probably the thing that people have been most concerned about is supportive services. What does that look like? What are we going to offer? How are we going to make sure that people get the support they need? And that's critical. I want to be super clear. Like, I care deeply, as a longtime Truckee resident, I care deeply about this house working in our neighborhoods, but I also care deeply about this house working for the people who stay there. And setting people up for failure is not something I'm interested in. We're not going to put people into a house and not give them the support and services they need to be successful. And so we have that team of AMI staff, those 3.5 people who are available business hours, and their job is to go in and meet with everybody and work on individual case plans. What are you trying to get to? What do we need to do? What are the action steps to get there? That's what case management really is, working on all those pieces of life, from identification to relearning how to shop and cook or whatever it may be that helps somebody be successful living inside. One of the jobs of the case manager is to link them to treatment services if they need that. And so that list of services we talked about earlier, that's what's available to these folks. Do you need psychiatry? Do you need substance use treatment? Maybe you need some time in inpatient somewhere before you come back to this house. Those are all things that case management team works on. In this particular house, we're proposing to have an overnight house manager. Most of our houses don't have that. People live there and services come to them in daytime hours. The idea of the house manager, and this is a piece that's gotten a lot of attention, is not a clinical person. It's not a treatment person. It's a responsible adult whose job it is to make sure the basic rules are followed. This is the, hey, it's past 10, you got to turn your music down person. This is the case management team in the morning. I'm really worried about Joe. He hasn't left his room in 12 hours. And the team can wrap around that person. So their job is simply to manage the behaviors to keep things safe and functioning well at night. They are not a treatment provider. And we've had great luck hiring people for those positions, in part because it's inexpensive rent and there's people out there that love to do this kind of work. In addition, there's project oversight from AMI staff and from county staff. I can't remember who referenced this, but there's a chance to, if as a neighbor or a concerned citizen, you see something that's amiss, you have a whole series of people you can go to and share those concerns. And we are very focused on being responsive and having this house be successful. So another big question is, who's going to live there? How do we make sure that this is going to work? So there's some criteria of who's eligible for housing like this. You have to be homeless or at risk of homelessness. You need to have mental health or substance use needs. We are very committed to the people in this house will be people who live in Truckee currently, have connections to Truckee. And you have to be willing to agree to the behavior expectations. There are people experiencing homelessness in Truckee who would not be appropriate for this house. They would not be successful, and they would help others not be successful. I really trust our team of Kathy and others who are expert at knowing our population and finding the people that are going to be successful in this setting. And there's a whole bunch of people who cannot live in this house. And this really speaks to some of the concerns of neighbors as well. There will be no sex offenders. There'll be no one with a history of significant violence. There'll be no one with a history of arson, etc. And those are absolutes. We do the background checks. We make sure that that's not going to happen. Let's try not to do too much yelling out. I did hear that question. I'll answer that, but I promise there's a Q&A part coming, so we will dive back into all these things. But so people can commit misdemeanors, things that are like drunk in public or loitering or all kinds of small crimes. Those are things that have happened, and when you live unhoused, they happen often. And so that is a thing that definitely occurs. So that's important to say. I will not say that nobody will have ever been arrested that lives in this house. People will have been arrested, but we are really confident that we will not place people here who have any history of violence. I am going to share this couple of stories of people who are likely residents of this house. These are people in Truckee who are hoping for a service like this to be available. First, there's Anthony. He lived in Truckee for the last 3 decades. People who know him describe him as extremely kind and being connected to nature and feeling safe in a small town is extremely important to him. He worked in this community in the construction industry. He owned a home and lived with his family in Truckee. 10 years ago, he got injured on the job and then his wife passed. After losing his career and his wife, he went into a spiral of despair. His home was foreclosed on. He began staying with friends and family, and once those resources dried up, he began sleeping in his car. He is proud of his independence and hasn't wanted to rely on the system for handouts. Over the past several years, he's built rapport with the case manager, and yesterday asked his case manager about the Hope Ridge house, stating, "I'm too old to be doing this. It's hard to be homeless when you get older. But this is my home. My family is here, and my memories are here. Leaving this community means losing a part of myself." Sandra is another person wishing this housing happens. She's lived in this community for the past 3 years. She works at the ski resorts in the winter and an adventure company in the summer. She served in the active reserves of the military for many years and came to Truckee looking for a better life with less chaos than a bigger city. She rents hotel rooms periodically, sleeps with friends, and at times outside in a camp she's created for herself. She's on the wait list for a unit at Coldstream Commons and hopes to be offered a unit soon. Hope Ridge House would give her an opportunity to move indoors while she waits for her forever home to be offered to her. These are real people with real lives. They are not, and I guess I also want to say there's a very emotional piece to this, which I understand. Fear is really easy to feel when we're faced with something new or something we don't know. I work with these folks all day, every day. This is a population of human beings who are somebody's brother, sister, child, mother, father. They are human beings who have come upon rough times for a variety of reasons, and we so often see incredible stories of recovery and redemption, of people getting stable in a house and then being able to pull all the other pieces back together again. I know it's hard to feel that when you don't know that, and I understand the fear, I really do, but it's important to say that piece of the picture. There's going to be rules at this house, and I think that's important to know too. There's certain rules that are absolutes, and if those rules are broken, people will lose their housing. Their lease will be terminated immediately. And then there's other rules that are more like, okay, we got to work on that. That's not acceptable, and we will work on those things slowly. But at the end of the day, if somebody's not being successful in this housing, we will evict them from the housing. So specifically what happens if somebody breaks the rules? People have rights as tenants, and that's important to note. We can't just evict people right now with nothing. But AMI Housing is very experienced as a landlord and very aware of their rights as a landlord and of tenant rights. And when they need to, they can end a lease agreement that can happen as short as 3 days. It can take up to 30 to 90 days, depending on the type of situation they're dealing with. But they are very effective at it. Often, too, we're looking for treatment interventions if somebody's having a hard time in their housing. Sometimes we may hospitalize somebody for a while, or we may take them to inpatient care of some kind. So those are various strategies that are used when somebody's not doing well in housing. And then lastly, if there are problems, again, you've heard this a few times now, but there'll be a lot of people you can contact. We are open to all kinds of ways of trying to help the neighborhood feel more confident, including weekly meetings to discuss any issues that come up, certainly phone numbers, etc. Turn back to you.
Yeah, and we're almost done. This is the last slide. So in our experience, we try really hard to be good neighbors in all of these types of properties. The homes are among the best kept in the neighborhood. People in those homes typically do really well. As Phoebe was talking about earlier, the success of permanent supportive housing is a reality that we experience in the houses we operate down the hill. Complaints and concerns are really minimal. You saw those 221 units. I've gotten almost no complaints about permanent supportive housing in my time in this position. We were going to show a video. It's a great video. We're going to skip that so that we can get to Q&A, but we'll find a way to get that video out so that folks can see it. So we're done with the presentation and ready for the Q&A.
All right, thank you. Whatever happened with the clicker?
Right here.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect.
And then Lou's over there recording the questions. And,
Main event.
and Jasmine's doing the comments.
Okay, Jasmine is doing comments. Lou is doing questions. I got this. Wait, everybody listen to me. You too. We're going to do 1 minute per person, but here for your question. But here's the thing. We're going to get through as much as we can get through. We're going to take a few questions. Lou is going to write the questions down, so you're going to see them on the board because this is going to go away in just a second. And if you have a comment, Mandy is going to take the comment so that they can update the FAQ and that sort of thing. So the questions, the reason that there's a difference between the questions and the comments is the questions we actually want our experts to answer for you today. And if you have a comment, that is a different thing. So I would like you to introduce yourself. Give us your name if you'd like to. You're not obligated to do that. You don't have to do that if you want. What we're going to do, I'm going to go around like we did on the little lightning round before. I'm going to get some questions. We're going to write them down. They're going to see them on the board. We're going to switch over to the panel to answer those questions, and then we're going to go back for another batch of questions, and then we're going to let the panel do that. We're going to do that a few times. Does that sound, is that going to work for everybody? Okay.
Yeah, so just let him have a second to pull up the...
All right, we're going to let Louis pull this up. And when you're asking your question, because we are doing live Spanish language translation, try to be focused and kind of keep it so that somebody could translate it. So they're asking not too fast. All right, let's go. Number one.
My name is Ben Jarso. I live in the Armstrong neighborhood. I think I have generally a process question here. We've listened to about an hour of arguments in favor of this, but it sounds like it's kind of confusing where we are in the decision-making process. What I want to know is, what does this team need to hear, or what evidence do you need to change your mind? That's like, simply put, where are we on this process?
All right, where are we on the process?
It sounds like there's a deadline for funding, and I'm wondering, are you looking at any other houses in Truckee that you're trying to get funding for that haven't been revealed yet?
All right. Considering the deadline, are we considering any other properties here in Truckee?
It sounds like this is about taking advantage of money in Prop 1. I want to know what kind of incentive monetary incentive the town of Truckee is getting with this.
Okay. What monetary incentive is the town of Truckee getting?
My name's Mary Brolio, and I have a two-part question. So, Supervisor Bullock, you described this as a potential project with no authorization and no funding. But there was a closed-door session for real property negotiation with the Board of Supervisors on September 24th. And there's a lease agreement with the homeowner that went into effect on December 10th. When I spoke with Jasmine a couple of weeks ago, she told me that the county planned to start moving tenants in February, and funding was coming from the warming shelter funds that weren't being used. So which one is it? Is it a potential project, or are you moving people in? And if you're moving people in, what happens to them if you're not awarded the grant money? Are they going to be back out on the street? Are we pulling funds from general budget? Where else is it coming from?
Okay, so if I can extract the question from there, it sounds like you feel like we're further along than they're saying that we are tonight. Okay, that's a good question. And then secondly, if this does not happen, what happens to these people? Okay. Okay.
We got it.
Okay, you got that. Awesome. Let me step in front of you again since you're all used to me now.
Can I do first a comment and then a question?
Go for it.
Okay, first is a comment, which is when I hear the presentation, Hardy, there's an energy that we are not in support of this. And I'm going to speak for my community here, which is this has nothing to do with pitting us against each other about being in support or not being in support. It's about the communication that there has been lack of and preparing the community for success. We're not for or against it. And I think what we are concerned about is also the use of dollars, that seeing that the funds would be better served in a property that can house more people that are closer than individuals. So that's my comment, is please don't pin us against each other and make us out to not be supportive. It's just how to be supportive. And then my question is, now that I got sidetracked on that, is since I haven't heard anything from Phoebe that there's a requirement for being clean or sober, so to say, drug testing or whatever it is. And since I know that very often this is a predicament that can lead to homelessness, I just want to know if we are setting these residents up for success, that is a requirement for being in such programs.
So your question is,
Okay.
will there be drug testing?
Yes.
That's a question.
All right.
Yes.
All right, let's switch over to the panel. Let them answer these questions, and then I'll come right back. So be thinking about what you want to ask next.
And David, they're also going to check back in their previous questions.
Okay. You want to come up and give us some thoughts here?
The process question is a good one. So a couple things just to answer your comment before I answer that question. We are here to listen to you. We're not working against each other. We are open to the suggestions you have to improve the process, improve the site, improve the location, improve the communication. All those things we're open to. On the process side, the real property negotiations that occurred and the lease signing was requisite for site control. So the county had to have site control of the property to apply for the grant. So we got a lease for the property, made a long-term lease on the property so that we could get site control. Yeah, we paid that. Yep. And so when we got site control, would allow us to apply for the grant. On the piece about the warming shelter and moving people in, it was our intention, because we don't have a warming shelter, that certain people could be moved in. We definitely did not anticipate this level of community engagement or difficulty with that site, because there was no alternative site. And we made those choices and wanted to do outreach on the property. When we got authorization from the board, I think it was late January, the board literally authorized staff to apply for the grant. So that's the process we're at. The whole process is included in what I just described.
The grant tied to the site?
The grant is tied to the site.
So it can't be anywhere else?
The grant is, I'm going to let them speak, but the grant could be used for any of that type of supportive housing somewhere else.
Just to add to that, this is one-time grant funds. The grant window opened on January 31st. Applications are already being put in. So if we want to apply for a house in Truckee, we are too late to apply for other sites, generally speaking. So that's why the site is important at this point. That's just the reality of it. You have to be able to move quickly to be able to attract these grant funds. And our hope has been to attract them for Truckee. We are under-resourced in our homeless services. We don't have anything on that continuum. And so the idea is to bring grant dollars to the table so that we can have housing solutions for Truckee. That's the goal.
Wait, so, hey. Just I don't mean to be the bad guy, but process-wise, let's finish answering these. Please keep the questions for the next round so that we've got the next batch to go.
I want to jump to that last question about sobriety. So the way that the law works in California at this point is we cannot run this house with restrictions on sobriety to be able to be in the house. What we can do is run the house with very strict behavior expectations. So somebody is absolutely allowed to come home and have a beer and watch a football game. Somebody is not allowed to come home and drink 20 beers and get really angry and yell really loudly at people. And so that's the difference. And so the behavior is what's problematic and regulated, not the substance use per se. And that's very effective for us. And what we also find is that when people who have substance use disorder needs come into stable housing, and this is what the evidence shows too, that use declines because people are stable and well, and they slowly are getting engaged in treatment and resources and supports. I know that's hard to believe sometimes, but that is true. That is the way it works, and that's why all funding sources and regulations have shifted that direction.
Keep the questions, please.
So I want to answer the question about monetary incentive for Truckee. There's absolutely no monetary incentive for Truckee. Grant funds would go to the county, and those grant funds would be used to purchase the home. So there's not an additional amount that goes to incentivize anything else. The incentive would be there's 6 fewer people living on the streets. So no monetary incentive to Truckee or the county. Trying to read these questions. What happens if the grant money doesn't come in? So what would happen if we're leasing it and we did move people in? We have delayed moving people in because of the community conversation. So those plans are not imminent to move people in until we're able to complete this. But if we were to move people in and we weren't to get the grant funds, then yes, people would have to either be transitioned to other housing situations or they could end up back in the street. That's a real possibility.
Brian, can I answer your question? I wanted to clearly answer question number 1. No, our mind is not made up. With the level of community insight and conversation that we're having around the topic, our mind is not made up. My mind is not made up. I represent the people in this room, like I talked about, doing the right thing for our community, including the 6 people that go in the house is my number 1 priority. For process, it's a very short time frame. So our board book for the decision that I have to make is going to post soon. It's going to go to the Board of Supervisors meeting, and we're either going to vote to adopt moving forward with the grant application. That doesn't mean we're purchasing the house. We're going to get the grant underway. We're going to try and secure that money. It doesn't mean it's going to be this house. That happens on Tuesday. So likely the staff and myself will come to some sort of conclusion about the total support for this project before Tuesday morning.
We're putting the questions that we're asking in that lightning round up on the board for these guys as well.
Okay,
Yes.
so moving on to the next one. Are we further along than has been stated? Let's be honest.
I think we are not any further along than what we have stated. What we're trying to do is give you the time frame, very short time frame. Real decisions need to be made about the site, and the reality of it is, if we lose this site, we likely will not be able to, in a timely fashion, identify another site and meet the grant funding requirements. What I'm telling you and standing here, if we miss this opportunity, supportive housing in Truckee is gone. So that's just really clear.
Okay, next question. Did we cover the drug test and sobriety? You hit on that. Okay.
Yep.
Is smoking allowed inside the house?
No, it is not. And just to jump into a couple others, it can be a co-ed house. There will not be children living there. Again, safety of everybody, residents, neighbors is our top priority when we think about who's a good fit for a house like this. And so that's all part of the consideration, especially in a shared housing environment like this. How do we vet potential residents? I think I spoke to that, but to add more detail, people that come into this house are already in what's called the Homeless Management Information System. It's a data tracking system where we have a lot of information about them, a lot of their history, a lot of their utilization of services. We know how long they've been in the Truckee area using services here. Those are all things that come into play when we're prioritizing who is going to be in this housing. So we typically know people pretty darn well by the time they hit the top of that list, because people are waiting a long time to get into housing of some kind or another. And I think we've answered the rest of
Okay,
those.
time for the next batch of questions. Let's go to the back here.
I have a comment.
Right there.
Oh, thank you. Comment. Brittany Bettesy, Armstrong Track resident. I'd like to share a personal insight. My brother-in-law is a house manager of permanent supportive housing in Seattle and has seen firsthand he is a result of permanent supportive housing and has now been a manager for 4 years, sober for 7. And these programs do work. I appreciate and understand and hear my neighbors' concerns around the process under which this went. However, I'd like us to consider, and I guess my question to the whole group is whether we trust or would consider the behavioral health experts' vetting of residents more or similarly to we trusting Airbnb residents who are in our neighborhood with no such vetting.
Okay.
My name's Skylar. I live in Palisade Street and Armstrong Tract as well. I just wanted to say, kind of as a comment, I've worked for a long time in emergency departments, and this issue is something that I'm very familiar with. And so, if you don't experience working with the homeless population often, it is a real issue. I think a lot of us saw it when we saw Safeway almost burning down, and so I think that. I just want to offer, somebody who lives in the neighborhood very much in support of this, Hardy, and thank you all for the work you're doing. And is there anything else as residents that we can do to help you out in advancing this project?
I don't have a question. We're also residents of the Armstrong Tract, live on Sierra Drive, and since you said your mind isn't made up, we are in support of this project. That's why we're here.
Okay, support. Question here.
I also just wanted to express support. I do not live in Armstrong Tract. I live in Tahoe Donner, but I have a child who goes to Discovery right next door, and I think this is a really important project that I would love to see happen.
Okay.
I don't feel that the town has been transparent in this matter. And others, I think that this is a comment. There's a lack of trust in Truckee town government in general, especially when it comes to housing, ADUs, and the planning department, and some of the investigation that's being done into the town and the planning department specifically, that's supposedly being suppressed. I don't know. I think there's a lot of mistrust in the governing entities. And
okay.
Hi, mine's directed toward Nevada County. This is in regards to Shannon Moon. Hardy, how are you going to guarantee the people in this neighborhood that these people are vetted, and I mean vetted? And I've been here a long time, and I've seen prisoners dropped off downtown that have roamed all over here. This was the thing with the homeless shelters downtown. They were getting people out of prisons down in the church, going into the school across the street. And that's why they got thrown out of that church downtown. They tried to also go up to the Vets Hall, and they got thrown out of there by the Truckee Donner PUD board. So I want to know who's going to vet these people? I don't trust the homeless people who work there. I mean, you got to have hardcore investigators, law enforcement, to make sure you got somebody that's not hiding something. Thank you.
Okay.
Just a quick question. If this all does go through, Brody Dwyer, certified Medi-Cal peer support specialist in support of this project, made some dear friends with the underhoused and homeless population in Truckee, experienced homelessness myself, became a camp host, so I had a place to live in the summer, okay? But I'm still here because of programs and work like what Kathy's done. So that's the comment there. But my question is, if this all does go through, what is the sustainability for the future? Because the grant funds do run out. So what is the sustainability beyond the grant? Thank you.
Awesome.
Hey, my name's Sarah. I have a couple questions. So my understanding of California fair housing law says you can't restrict housing placements to locals, that you have to give equal opportunity to anyone who applies. So I understand the intention and like the good intentions of placing someone from our community, but what is actually to stop AMI housing, whether it's in the initial placements or down the road, from bringing people up from West County, from Auburn, et cetera? I mean, that's people with high service needs coming to an area with very low service needs. Then we can't even service the people that are here already. My other question, sorry, my voice is shaking, I'm nervous. Where is the case management going to come from? I mean, honestly, Nevada County can barely staff our mental health crisis services at the hospital. Like, where are these case managers that are going to be on site every day? Where are they going to come from? Are they coming up the hill? Are they actually going to be on site? Are they just going to check in and be on call?
My name's Matt. Quick comment. I'm a combat veteran. I've seen quite a bit. And I would ask that those who are in favor of this kind of stop with the sort of shaming component. This really has nothing to do with our level of care for homeless people. Okay, we are homeowners, we're landowners, and we have legitimate concerns. So I would ask for the rest of this process that piece of this kind of be removed from this, okay? My question is, what was the selection process like? I have managed projects for many companies for a lot of years, a lot of dollars. You don't just make one choice. You don't just walk around. There's tons of houses for sale. There's tons of buildings for sale. We're people who own multifamily homes offered an opportunity to say, my building might be a great one. I would like to take advantage of this. Can you please tell us about how you decided this home and no other homes? Thank you.
Thanks for your service, Matt.
Hey, you know, this young lady's been waiting. I'll get over there.
Hi, my name is Melissa, and I'm in support of I do not live in Armstrong Tract. I have a lot of experience with seeing what Kathy Foley and the group has done with people who live here. You can't ship them out here. They've lived here for many, many years. They're good people. I've spent the night with them many times, and I 100% never felt afraid, and I trust that Kathy Foley and the county and all the people who have been working on this will do a good job. I don't have a question.
Okay, thanks. All right, I'm going to go over here so that we don't have violence breaking out. Yes.
My name is Carol Frums, and I'm a retired realtor for over 30 years in the North Tahoe and Truckee areas. Let me put my glasses on. And I'm aware that this facility in a high-density residential neighborhood might be a disclosure item. The real estate agents are, if someone that lives in the vicinity of this home is looking to sell that home, the agent's going to provide them with disclosure forms to fill out. So I'm just wondering, once a seller discloses that this facility is in the near vicinity of this house, how could that affect property values? I know if two homes were for sale that were very similar, one had this next door in the vicinity and one didn't, a buyer might choose either one way or the other. But I'm just saying this could affect property values. Just any thoughts on that?
Okay. One more?
One more and then go to the...
Hi, I have a comment. My name is Shelley Crawford. I've lived in Nevada County my entire life. I understand people are fearful, but you have to realize I was homeless. My husband was homeless. We were lucky enough to get housing. And if it wasn't for transitional housing, we wouldn't be housed. And I have personally met every single homeless person in Nevada County, Grass Valley, Nevada City, and Truckee. And my husband and I go out and do what we can to help them, whether it be warm socks or food. You know, these people are human beings. That's what everybody's missing here. They're human beings. They have a right to have a roof over their head. I understand that community is scared. But you know what? Go and meet your neighbors. When you have a new neighbor move in, don't you go and introduce yourself? What's the difference? They're human beings. And thank you, Hardy, for working so hard for this.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Move to the question answering period for this. All right.
I'm going to jump into a few of them in the middle there, and others will answer others.
This is going to confuse me.
Do you want to go one by one, like in order?
Would you like to all go one by one in order so we make sure we cover everything?
Perfect.
I kind of feel like
excellent plan.
My limited brain capacity would feel much better about that. Who would like to answer the first? What's our definition of community?
I can tell you, when I use the term community, I'm talking about Truckee Tahoe community, Martis Valley, east of the summit. I represent all the way down in Nevada City. But when I was using community tonight, that's what I meant.
Okay. And what can residents of Armstrong do to support the project?
I think hearing your voice is important. And I think that if and when people move into a house, creating a welcoming neighborhood is the most important thing people can do. People need to feel safe in their home. And that includes these folks. I think in terms of vetting residents, I think I spoke to that a fair bit, and this actually relates also to the Truckee residents piece. Permanent supportive housing is different in that we work through what's called the Homeless Management Information System that I referred to earlier, and we're required to use sort of a prioritization process of who gets into housing because so many people don't have housing and need it. And that in that process, you can do things like create a project that's Truckee only. And so this project would be available only to Truckee people. I know there's a lot of confusion around that because we had the Artist Lofts housing project and Coldstream Commons housing project. Both those are different funding sources. That's HUD voucher funding. And so people with HUD vouchers can go anywhere that a HUD voucher is taken. And that's a different process. And so this is separate from that. This will be 100% people who have Truckee connection and roots, are living here, have reason to be here. The on-site case managers, that's, again, that AMI staff, the 3.5 full-time employees that currently work for AMI in Truckee. That's the housing support during the daytime hours. They are folks with a lot of experience working with people with homelessness and are very good at their jobs. And then I'm going to let you guys talk about.
We skipped a couple.
Did I?
I'll just mention on sustainability, and I'll turn it back to you for part of it, but this is a grant to purchase the home. It's not the grant to operate the home. And so a lot of permanent supportive housing is a leased situation where part of the costs of operation are paying that lease. So being able to own the home does mean that it's more sustainable in terms of the ongoing operations, because then all funding can go towards that staffing and making sure it's a stable environment. And part of Proposition 1, where the capital funding comes from, also requires a redetermination of how Mental Health Services Act funds are used. That's a little bit of inside baseball, but a percentage of that funding has to be used for housing. And so there's going to be money from the county that's available to pay for housing for people. And so there is capacity on an ongoing basis to expand the ongoing cost of housing in addition to the capital costs that would be paid by this grant. I don't know if that makes sense.
So what about the selection process for the property itself?
Yeah, as I went through very, very briefly in the slide, we have to have that right combination of a property that's going to be feasible. It's in the right price range. It's zoned appropriately. It doesn't need extensive remodels. It doesn't have people in it that have to be relocated. Those are a lot of the factors that go into selecting a property. And then there has to be the timing of the grant available. And so a number of properties were considered as part of this that didn't meet those criteria. They were not zoned correctly. They were in a commercial area. This is a residence, so it's in a residential zoning area without changing the land use through zoning or conditional permit. It doesn't need extensive remodels. It doesn't have people that we have to then pay to put into other places because they're already residing there. So those are some of the factors. Numerous other properties did come up through the process, but this is the one that had the right combination of price and those other factors that were mentioned. We can wait until we get to the next question and answer.
Okay, you're my first question when we get to the next round.
One thing.
What about the property values? Do we have any, like for the other houses that or the other areas you've done this in? What impact or disclosures are required from realtors?
I'll let our team answer that, but I wanted to talk a little bit, just briefly, about the location. Everybody talks about why here, why not somewhere else. There is no good spot. We've not found one. When I got involved in this 4 years ago, the first thing I asked for was a site assessment to identify potential sites for warming shelters. That was our focus. That includes supportive housing and others. And if you tell me 10 locations you think are great, I'll tell you the 10 people that told me no, the 10 people that fought against me, and the 10 reasons why they gave me that would never and could never work there. I'm not saying that this is the perfect site. I'm telling you there is no perfect site. That's done. There is no perfect site. And I'm just telling you that because that's the truth. And when we're done with this conversation, if we try and cite a warming shelter or day orientation services or anything else to help this population, we are going to get massive pushback. Every site is going to be a failure. Every site is going to have liability associated with it. It's a condition of picking the characteristics that can work for a population that works there, and we support them to do that. I just wanted to mention that if you've been involved in any of these discussions, and everybody on THAC understands what I'm talking about, every single conversation is about the site and where it is and why it's not good there.
Okay, so what about the property values? Who wants to speak to that?
So I feel like we need to research the disclosure issue, and we will do that. What I do know is, as you probably saw from those pictures, these properties don't devalue neighborhoods. They tend to actually increase values. Often they're truly well kept, no issues, no law enforcement responses. We can't all say that about every house in our neighborhood, or maybe even some of the houses we live in. So we keep them to really high standards, and we believe that they've been a positive addition to the neighborhoods they're in.
Okay, next round. I promised you. And this battery's dying, so bear with me.
David, here's the other one.
Okay, perfect. Let me get the question, and then I'll get that.
So when I first learned about this, I called Amy. They've never returned my phone call, so that was also listed Jasmine's conversation with her. And she informed me that she was really good friends with my neighbor, Craig. And when I watched Craig's house trying to sell all summer, he had it listed high. It wasn't selling. It didn't sell. I think Carol told me the exact stuff, the way it worked out, but it didn't sell. And then he found his friend to help purchase it. He now lives in Alta, and we get to be the neighbors of these people. And I love these people. I've got friends, well, family members who've used one. One was successful, the other's dead. So that's 50%.
Okay. JD.
I'm JD. I live in the Armstrong Tract. I'm the whistleblower. I've been asked if I have an attorney, and I will answer yes. I've been asked if I want to save my integrity. These people are my integrity, my community. I told what I was told. Why is Jasmine not speaking? She's the director. She's running the program. Since all of our conversations from the very beginning, you have protected Jasmine and surrounded her and not let her speak. This is the start of where the problem was at. And so I'm not going to tell you whether I'm for it or not. I'm just going to tell you I was one of them. I told you before, I was homeless. I lost my family. My wife, I had nothing. I was sleeping in a drug house in the corner in the concrete in the garage with nothing, and someone gave me direction to go here. And my wife told me yesterday, I'll end with this, she said, well, after 21 years, you almost paid your house off. Are you kidding me? A guy from there to there? But I had services. And that's what we missed. And don't forget, I was your liaison and your only contact to Truckee during COVID for every single of them mornings on the radio that you had no contact to this community with. It was me. So I understand the disconnect. Be kind to everybody.
Thanks, JD.
Thank you, JD. My understanding, and maybe you can clarify me if I'm wrong, this is just from my own research, is that the original 3 rounds of home key funding that has supported the houses in Western Nevada County did not have the same behavioral health requirements for the residents as Home Key Plus does. And I'm directly from the Notice of Funding Availability. It states that these people have to have no preconditions and barriers to entry or continued tenancy, such as sobriety, treatment, or service participation requirements. And when you're using your successful houses, those are not the same target population. When you're using those as examples, this is a different target population to be moved into these homes. Isn't that correct?
Okay. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Sarah Kilgauer, and I am the owner, I guess, of the new child care center that is going in right on the corner. So, sorry, my voice is shaky too. I'm nervous. I just have a question. How are, you said you guys have 6 people or 5 people that can potentially move into this house. What is the selection that they have to go through? Because I know that I'm working with Nevada County, and I literally have to jump through hoops, and I have to prove everything in my background, all of my finances, everything just to open a center. What do they have to do in order to be allowed to live in the home? Do they have to jump through the same hoops with Nevada County or something similar to those kinds of things? So I would just like, a little bit of clarity of how you've selected these handful of people.
Thank you.
Hi, sorry. My name is Chris Mertens. I have a 3-year-old son who attends Discovery Preschool down the street. And I just want to say 2 things. I lived on High Street for a couple of years when the warming shelter was in place, and walked my dog by it every day. And I had no issues at all with the folks who were living there. They seemed genuinely thrilled and super happy to say hi to you. They just wanted a warm roof over their head, and I did that for 2 winters that I lived there. I had a really good experience. And I also just... I think it's also just important to recognize what the alternative is here. And the alternative is that 6 people will continue living on the streets with all the safety, public health concerns, and issues that we know already exist for that. So I think from a safety perspective and all those things, I think it's really important to just think about what is the alternative here if this doesn't happen. And that's, in my opinion, much worse from a safety and a public health perspective and all the other reasons. So thank you.
My name's Megan Lacey, and yep, I live in Armstrong. I don't have a problem with homeless folks. I lived in downtown Austin when essentially the city made homelessness legal. And for a period of 2 years, these folks, I walked past them every single day and had interactions ranging from like kind of profound to a little conflictual. So my issue stems from the representation from the county and how I feel a little bit set up to fail as a community member for support of this. When I spoke with Hardy on the phone, I felt like you were more interested in sort of debunking what was on the flyer, and rather than, being committed to the 3 parts that you talked about, town, county, and community. I feel like we have not been set up and educated to be able to support something like this. So I also want to just ask you, can you please define permanent as in permanent supportive housing and explain the time frame used to define permanent for this particular facility and others like it projected to operate in the area? The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development defines transitional housing as a time frame of anywhere between 3 months to 2 years and includes supportive services. Our community would like for Nevada County to account for this discrepancy in its definition and, if applicable, correct the record that a neighborhood flyer was spreading misinformation in regards to this topic.
Okay.
I'd like to continue with what Megan said. My name's Dave Sheets. I also live in the Armstrong Tract. We incorporated in 1993 for local control, and why is this not a town of Truckee issue? That's my first question. The other is, why is Nevada County, if you folks have been working on this 18 months and you say that the flyer had misinformation, that's the only information we got. Had it not been for J.D. Haas, this would just have happened. On February 1st, people would have moved in, and we'd have wondered what was going on. So why did Nevada County take 18 months to let the neighborhood know? And this is our first opportunity to hear any of this stuff. And yes, we were misinformed because we had no information. And now we understand it's going to be Tuesday, or that's it.
No.
Hi, I just want to say that I think to facilitate good nature, you have to practice good nature. And that in a scary political climate, actions matter, and they speak louder than words. So when we look into whether we approve this project or not, we have to think about what type of people we want to become in the future, and what type of lives we want to lead. Thank you.
I sort of have a couple of things. I just want to say I don't live in Armstrong Tract. I live in Truckee. I live in Prosper. And so I have a question sort of for Jan. I believe that's his name. Would you feel comfortable if this house opened, say, on Snowshoe, which is, I know, where you live? I know I have, like I said, I don't live in Armstrong Tract, but I just imagine if this opened next to my house, which people are supporting it, would you actually like it to open next to your house? I just feel like everyone keeps saying it's great, but would you support it if it was your neighbor? And I also, you say that it's going to help with wildfire risk and all these things, but the people that you say they're going to be living there already have jobs. They're probably the ones living in their cars. These aren't the people that I see sitting outside a Safeway that are starting fires. So I feel like you're saying it's going to help all these things, but it's not, right? Because we're housing other people, not those people.
Okay, one more for this round.
Hi, my name's Eric. I live in Armstrong Track, and I just wanted to double check. Armstrong has a lot of children foot traffic right down the road there, and I just want to make sure that all of you putting through this project would feel comfortable sending your kids walking by a house like this with the information that we've received so far, because there's a lot of discrepancy as far as the exact tenants. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now just to take a moment to recognize Lewis writing down all these questions. Thank you, Lewis. You're doing great. All right, who wants to, let's scroll up to where we left off and see who wants to start. Are we?
Round 3, where he is.
Round 3, okay. 17, can you explain home key funding rounds?
Yes, so Home Key is a funding source. It's one of many funding sources that have been available over the last 5 years. It is the biggest funding source. Previous rounds of Home Key did not necessarily require behavioral health conditions as part of residency. However, most of the permanent supportive housing that we have down the hill wasn't necessarily funded with Home Key funds. It was funded with a variety of other funds like HUD, permanent supportive housing vouchers, which absolutely require it. Basically, all the housing that behavioral health operates, everybody in it has behavioral health needs, is the bottom line. We fund it in a variety of different ways, but they're all people with mental health or substance use needs in those houses that were talked about earlier. The selection process, I feel like we've covered that pretty thoroughly, but I will continue to say we have a list of all the people in Truckee who are homeless and looking for housing. We have a lot of information about them. For somebody to actually sign a lease, a lot more information is gathered around their financial credit history, their criminal history, their length of time in Truckee. Those are all variables that, of course, impact whether somebody can be successful in housing. The time frame used to define permanent in the context of this housing.
Before you go on, can you, have we
have they been selected yet? Yeah. No, they have not been selected yet. We know who people are. If housing were to become available in 3 weeks, I think that the team probably has a good idea of people that might be good fits, but we don't know that housing is going to become available in 3 weeks, so we don't know who we're going to put in. One of the things that's perhaps most cruel to do to people is to say, we think we have housing for you, and then you don't. And so we aren't identifying people who could be placed there yet. The time frame to define permanent. Permanent means it's that person can stay in this housing as long as they like. It is not transitional housing, it's permanent housing. And so some people, like I said earlier, may stay in permanent supportive housing their whole life. They might need that level of support and subsidy. Other people likely will not. They will stabilize, they will get an income source, ideally through employment. They will move on to other, perhaps subsidized housing, and eventually get their own housing. And we see both those paths, and both of them are great. Again, I think earlier somebody asked, how do you define success? We define success as stability. People are stable and well, they stay housed, and ideally they thrive. They engage in their community in some way, shape, or form. I think we heard a great story a little bit earlier of folks who experienced homelessness and who now give back to their community by helping people around them. For us, that's success. Why is this not a town of Truckee issue? Great. Excellent plan.
Yeah. It is a town of Truckee issue. It's absolutely a town of Truckee issue. It's a Nevada County issue. It's a regional issue. It's a state of California issue. It's a federal issue. It's all of our issues. It's just a community issue, period. Nevada County is leaning into the problem. We're here to offer a solution. With our partners at the town who have been at the table, who worked through THAC and worked through the process. We're all responsible. We all love Truckee, just as JD said. JD and I have known each other forever. We both love Truckee. I know that he and his family love Truckee as much as I do. It's all of our problems. It's not going away. It's going to be all of our problems to continue forward in the future. The hospital system answers the call when people can't find a place or need a place to go. It's all of our issue. And CSAC and NACO that I had up earlier said it perfectly. All the 58 counties they look at and talk to and work with, none of them have been successful unless they've employed those three components: the community, the town, and the county.
Before you go, the second part of this, you've apologized for the community, the lack of outreach, but can you explain what happened?
Yeah, I can. I'm just going to be very blunt, so forgive me if it's not meant to be demeaning or anything. There's a certain speed in time in which we have to travel to get this done. I've been asking to identify properties in East County since the first day I stepped foot in this office. Mike Dent was previously engaged in this. He's no longer with the county. He retired. Great person. We looked at properties constantly. We engaged real estate agents to understand what we could afford. We understand the grant criteria, and properties occasionally become available. No property became available with the landlord who was willing to give us site control and give us a lease, which is what we needed, which was key to get the grant applied for. So it was, and that's why I keep saying it was once quick opportunity that came up that Ryan's describing for us. The house was for sale. It had enough doors. Each door is paid, I think it's $200,000 times 6, so $1.2 million to cover the acquisition cost. It was currently for sale. We could gain a lease. I convinced my colleagues to pay for the lease. And that's why this opportunity is in front of us. So that's how it came down so quickly. And again, we planned to do outreach. When we identified, the board literally voted on a Tuesday and said we authorize staff to apply for a grant. The next day, Jasmine and others, and Jasmine's name came up. By the way, Jasmine was our Employee of the Year last year, just to let you know. She's an outstanding person. I stand behind her 100%. So the board voted to authorize staff to apply for the grant. We called a local homeowner who you know well and had a meeting with them. And within 24 hours, the flyer was circulated before we had any opportunity to talk to anybody about the potential project. If I haven't made that clear, I'm willing to talk to you after and give you that timeline.
She spoke to me about it all.
So
Okay.
I just want to let you know that's how the lack of communication has transpired. When we understood, and the first day the flyer hit, I got 55 phone calls to my phone. I was calling people back for 2 days straight, and then we realized we have to do community outreach. We have to have a forum. We have to engage with our town partners. So we came out to talk about it, and what we're here to do is give you the information you need to make this a community process. I'm sorry about the timeline. I'm sorry we didn't somehow get in front of things that weren't yet even solidified. We could have done better. We pledged to do better. We're here trying to meet your needs.
Okay, so on number 21, what would the comfort level be for a house like this operating near the people responsible for the project?
I would be very comfortable. I can see the artist lofts from my bed. I look at it. I walk past people camping often in the morning when I'm walking my dog, camping along the side of the street and along the train tracks. These are human beings. They are our neighbors. They are worthy of our care and our inclusion in our community.
Lewis, do we have anything below 21? That was it. Okay, how about in this, I'm going to just ask a request because there might be some other, in addition to the questions that we've got. If you've got ideas for alternate solutions, can you ask them in this round so that we can kind of get those on the record?
Hi, my name's Paul. I want to touch on number 7 over here. You want to look what success is? I'm not asking for the applause. Whatever happened to people helping people? How many of y'all get behind the wheel after you had a little bit of wine, smoked a joint or whatever? How many people, you're going to look down at the homeless because they're down on their luck? I was homeless. 15 years homeless. I did all my sobriety homeless. Besides when I got here to Truckee 3 years ago, and that's including having 7 my top layer of teeth. I can't speak quick. Pulled. Okay, I did all my dentures homeless. Nowhere to go, nowhere to shower. Having to jump in a river that, leach bit. I am a success, and there's a lot of success amongst the homeless.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Come back.
Question and a comment.
I like your hair.
Thank you. Question is, I'm sure there's way more questions in this room that can even possibly get addressed this evening. So, Hardy, to you in the county, could you please put up some sort of digital opportunity for people to submit questions, and you could respond with written comment that everyone here then can see? I think that would help address a lot of the people that aren't going to get a shot. And then my comment, and I'm going to pile on here, is with all due respect, you're making it really hard for us to trust your judgment when this feels like a very half-baked moonshot at grabbing some Prop 1 money. And I'm not going to say it's not worthwhile. I'm not going to say that it's more about the process than the project. And like she said back there, you've set us up to not support you because you've put us in a defensive spot. So I don't know how we unring that bell. I don't think we can, but that's disappointing. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brian Farrell. I want to be clear. I don't think anyone here is speaking out against the homeless. I'm speaking up for my wife and my daughters and all the hard work I put in. I served for 32 years as a professional fireman, sometime in this town, responding to people of all affluency, homeless on their worst days, and my whole empathy has been whittled at because no one considers my feelings, how it affects me. I'm on a full pension and I work a full-time job to ensure that my wife and daughters have a safe house to live in, a healthy neighborhood, food in the refrigerator. So I'm not here against homeless. I am here as an advocate for my family, for my investment. I've been a homeowner in Armstrong for 25 years. And I have served this state and this community, and no one can call me selfish in this room because I have been to all kinds of people on their worst day, and I have always been there to support it, but I don't see anybody supporting me. All these advocates, it's not affecting them. It's not affecting your daughters who get solicited over in Coldstream when they're riding their bikes. I've responded to the Artist Loft. I've responded to the Coldstream. I've responded to it all, and there are problems that aren't being addressed. These are all political answers, and I've wasted hours of my time here listening to decisions that have already been made. And that man right there, in one day had a flyer to every single homeowner in our neighborhood, but you as a county official in the town of Truckee can't inform us? Bullshit. It's bullshit.
I just like to ask the question. I understand there's a vacant lot behind the home where the Hope Ridge House is going to be, or next to it. Are you guys planning on building another facility there?
Or buying that?
Or buying it? Because otherwise, what's going to go on with it?
I need to get to you. Please, I'm sorry to be crawling all over everybody, but yeah.
I think we all realize homelessness is a really big problem in our community, but I think the bigger problem is our mental health and our substance abuse solutions are not great here. I think we're getting the cart a little bit ahead of the horse. I think we need to start with, do we have mental health and substance abuse solutions for these people? Do we have a warming shelter for the people that are in a situation? It's kind of like a stepwise warming shelter, then permanent housing, then then like, what am I trying to say? Section 8, that's not what it's called here. Affordable housing. Like, it's like a stepwise. We don't have that warming shelter right now. We don't have those behavioral health services. We have some, but they're really lacking.
Okay. Let's move around here.
Hi, my name is Kylie. I live in the Armstrong Track. You had mentioned that there would be no drug testing. So if people are allowed to be using drugs at this house in very close proximity to two preschools, I just want to know what the plan is. If there's not drug testing, what are you going to do about that?
Okay. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Reverend Claire Novak. I'm here with United for Action, which is our North Tahoe Truckee Coalition of faith-based organizations. You asked us to talk about solutions. Our coalition, back in 2013, saw that there was no warm place for people to survive severe weather. It was shameful. And we worked to create that emergency warming center. I want to lift that up as a solution that saved lives, that helped build community, that connected people to services. Thank you for that. And our coalition has kept involved with the Tahoe Truckee Homeless Advisory Committee. It's packed with solutions. I really encourage you to read that because it represents the kind of collaborative effort to pull our community together to do something very basic. Give people the dignity of a warm, stable, permanent home. And that's what we're looking for here. The report says we need at least 44 beds for permanent supportive housing in this area. I want to lift up Placer County for the 12 beds that are now open in Kings Beach and Brown Bear Studios. People there are thriving. They're connected. They're happy. They're rebuilding their lives. Look for their stories. And we're asking here to solve a gap of 0 permanent supportive housing in Truckee. This is 6 beds to add to that need of 44. I'm strongly in support of this. We've done grassroots efforts, but we need a coordinated effort of town, county, and community to move this continuum of housing further along. Thank you.
Okay, hi, Vanessa Breath, Armstrong Tract area. I first have 3 simple comments and then a question. I'm wondering if anybody has thought about how the 5 individuals that are living under this roof together are going to feel about each other. You know, how's it gonna look when you have 5 individuals with, we know one of the criteria is mental illness. At what varying levels of mental illness are these people gonna feel comfortable cohabitating together under one roof, sharing bathrooms, kitchens, dining spaces? That's a concern for me, and I want to know how those people would feel about that as well. And then another comment is the staff that's required on staff is 20 hours per week is what we've been told, and that's what the publications are showing. What's going to happen the other 140 hours? Like, are they meant to follow through with specific job tasks, get out into the community? What's the follow through with that? And then also, we were told by a community member that Jasmine stated that this type of facility looks different than Section 8 housing. It's actually more vulnerable, more severe conditions. So I would just like some more information regarding that, and then I'm good with that. Thank you.
Who's here? Okay.
Hi, I'm Shelly. I live in the Armstrong Tract, and I have a son that goes to Discovery. I think my comment or question, I'm not sure how you want to put it, but I think we need some data. I haven't seen any data-based information about police reports in the area. I want to know if so many of these houses exist that are successful, then you guys should be showing some data on the screen showing how many times the police have been called to these places, how many instances there have been with the neighbors, and also home values. Obviously, it's pretty easy to get a market value report. And if you were showing us some data to show this being successful, we might be a little more open to it. But everybody just keeps comparing it to Brown Bear. And Brown Bear is a completely different house than this. The second I heard it was like Brown Bear, I got in the car and I drove to Brown Bear. This is not Brown Bear. You pull up to Brown Bear and there's 11 units. You're not asking 5 people to live together in one space. And I'm very concerned about the drug and alcohol behind the lot behind it. And I just overheard them saying they're going to buy the lot next door possibly. We need to think about the whole area, not just the house itself, because all people are going to do is walk up from Coldstream and be right there.
Matt in the back.
Earlier, you guys mentioned that one of the benefits is that the people who are in this house are subject to more criminal or intervention by law enforcement if there's an issue. Whereas if it's just a neighbor, it's a civil issue, right? That there could be criminal issues here, which is great. But my question is, how does that extend to the other 30 some odd homeless in Truckee? If there is no warming shelter and their friends live in this place, are others welcome to come and hang out in this house? Are they welcome to loiter in front of the businesses and the schools there? And if so, what recourse do we have to call law enforcement if they're not under this program? Thanks.
I'm Anderson Bowden. I live in Armstrong Tract, and I actually looked at this house when it was on the market, and it is well positioned to house multiple different parties. It's got, I believe, a basement that has its own unique door, then the main level, and I think there might be a separate door to a third level. I can't remember. It was in the summer. And so, like, considering multiple parties are going to be living in this home, it will be able to spread them out, and it could be a good situation for them. When I was touring the home, it's heavily wooded. So thinking about the maintenance, y'all said that the houses are well maintained. It will need significant defensible space upkeep every year. So who's doing that? I do think it could be a good thing. That's it.
Kind of a solution-oriented comment. There was somebody who asked for an online option for people to be able to ask questions and whatnot. And so my suggestion is you have a whole list of questions here. If somebody can actually type out the answers, I don't know if this is recorded or not, but go back and type out the answers so that those of us who want to be informed can then go online and read.
It is being recorded. You are a YouTube star right now.
Yay. Lucky me.
You better get an agent.
Okay. Sorry, I was still unclear. Going forward, even after this grant, either you get it or you don't get it, are you still going to be looking at more homes in the community to house the rest of the homeless people, the unhoused, excuse me? And are you still looking for grants? Is this like a long-term project where you're going to continue looking for homes in the community?
All right, let's go back to answers now.
That went at me.
You okay?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. All right, Lewis, where do we leave off for round 4? Will the county put up a digital platform for people to ask questions about this proposed project and receive answers from the county?
On that one, yes, that's a great idea. We've kind of started that with a frequently asked questions document. There's a short version here. There's a QR code to the website where we posted the longer version. And we will basically just keep adding questions to that and answers to that in that document. So our website will be the place to find that.
How do we submit?
Probably the best way is via email. And I think there's a number of email addresses out there, including a general behavioral health one, as well as Hardy's email would be. He's the guy.
You can send them to me for sure. I get them, and we have a database, SharePoint database set up. So as soon as they come into me, I forward them to Claire in our main office. She sends them to the outreach process, and you'll get a call back saying, "Hey, we got your a phone call. We got your comment. We're looking at it." Some of them are routed to me, some are routed to other staff members.
But they'll be published.
Yeah, we can. Yes, they haven't been yet, but we can. Yes.
Can you speak into the microphone and tell everybody what the magical email address is?
Mine is first.lasthardy.bullock@nevadacountyca.gov.
I think the general one is behavioral health at nevadacountyco.gov, but I'm not 1,000% sure. Behavioral.health.
Okay.
We will get.
Okay.
Yeah. The other, can I mention one more thing too? Yeah. I felt really bad about not being able to return the phone calls and emails I got in precursory to this meeting. And I pride myself in literally calling every single person that calls me back. But it wasn't practical, nor was it really appropriate because we were getting so much energy. So I just want to let you know that when this is done, I'm again available to people in this room to talk. I'll meet with you and talk with you.
Okay, just checking in. We were supposed to end at 7:30. It doesn't feel like we're done. We're willing to stay as long as everybody wants to stay. So I just want to let you know that if you need to go, you can go. And if you want to stay with us, then you're welcome to stay with us. Our number 23, are there any plans to purchase/build on the vacant lot behind the proposed Hope Ridge house?
So the vacant lot is part of the purchase deal. It's a small, undevelopable parcel. It was purchased at very low cost to support things like if we ever need to improve parking or have defensible space, that kind of thing. It's not as to build additional facilities there. It's just for the.
Why does your staff report say something different?
I didn't hear all those questions.
Okay, moving on to 24.
Well, wait, actually, before we go on to 24,
Yeah.
let's answer that. If it says differently in the staff report.
Yeah, so when the first time I saw it in closed session, so we have to negotiate property acquisition, which happens all the time at the county, in closed session. When I saw the portfolio and I went and visited the property myself, it was a residential house with an adjoining lot that was also for sale. It's not developable. It's basically a drainage ditch in between two developed parcels. So I think the staff report may or may not have included that, but we definitely saw on the second part that lot was part of it. Absolutely no plans to develop it. It's not developable, and I don't know what more you want us to answer. No, absolutely not. No.
Okay.
No.
The January 14th staff report states, I'm reading verbatim, this includes an adjacent parcel for construction of a new permanent supportive housing site.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, it's in your staff report.
The staff report that I got, and just to clarify,
I'm on the Nevada County.
that's fine. Just disregard that. I don't know what you're talking about. It's a house.
It's on your board of supervisors. I'm not making this up.
What I'm trying to say is if there is an error in the staff report, what we're talking about buying, just to be totally clear, is the subject property and the unbuildable lot adjacent to it. That's all there is.
An error in the staff report.
That's all there is. There's nothing more.
Okay, let's go on to the next one. If there's no drug testing for residents of the house, what are the plans for ensuring safety for the community?
So again, as the rules state really clearly, no illegal drugs are allowed in the house. So that's rule number one. Rule number two is people need to be able to behave appropriately, and that's really how we guide things. There are lots of houses in Truckee where drug use is happening, and that's just the reality of it. People in this house are significantly more monitored than people in lots of other houses in Truckee. We feel really confident that people will be safe in this house. There will not be drug dealing happening from this house. There will not be illicit drugs in the house. Those are things that are absolutes, and you can get to that place without drug testing. There's a lot of ways to ensure a house is safe, and that's our experience with lots of houses.
Okay, how do you handle the interpersonal dynamics for the people that live there?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And I think it harkens back to that slide where there's a whole, in the ideal world, you have a whole variety of solutions because no one solution is right for everybody. Some people are really happy to be in shared housing. People who are homeless often live in community together, and living alone in an apartment can be very lonely after living in community. So some people really want to live in a house with roommates. Other people, absolutely no way they belong in a house with roommates, and we wouldn't put them there. And again, ideally, eventually, we have a variety of options that serve all those variety of needs. That's the goal. But in the short term, again, we are deeply focused on our client's success. So we're not going to put somebody in a house that we know is not going to be amenable to living in close proximity to other people.
And what happens during the hours on-site assistance is not available?
So people live their lives. People have things they're working towards, whether, again, it's amazing how much work it can take to get your medical care done, get all your documents in order for getting your ID so that you can get your driver's license, so that, all the pieces that people are working towards, as well as going to treatment services if needed. Eventually, hopefully, people are working. That's the goal. Some people that will happen quickly or maybe is already in place. For other people, it might take time to be in that place. But the goal for the people we serve in behavioral health in general is that people are thriving, and that means have purpose and meaning in their lives. Not just, yay, we got you a house, park it on the couch for the rest of your life, but what's next? How do you find your path in this world so that you can thrive?
Okay, and just to clarify, because I I can't remember who it was. I think it might have been you. Yeah. You didn't mean, like, there was the person who's living in the house who's going to be there all the time, and then there were those who were providing the clinical services who are just there during the daytime. Were you talking about the people who in the daytime when they're not there, or you were talking about the Okay, so you do have somebody at the house 24/7.
No, not 24/7.
Okay.
So we have an overnight house manager. So that person may work during the daytime hours, but they're there in the evenings and overnight hours. And then during the daytime hours, we have that case management team, those 3.5 FTE that we were talking about earlier. Those are the folks that are coming in daytime hours and checking in on people, working with people one-on-one. And then in addition, we have treatment services that are available to residents depending on their personal needs. And so those case managers are really the core staff. They're the ones that really know the folks in the house, that are working with them, that say, hey, looks like, it's time to go meet with your psychiatrist. Let's practice how you're going to get there. This time I'm going to ride the bus with you. Next time you're going to take the bus yourself. I'll meet you at the other end and make sure it worked out. Like, those are the kinds of, it's called rehabilitation skills that case managers are working on with folks, helping them get life skills back in place that they may have lost during their times of homelessness.
But the house manager, correct me if I'm wrong, the person who's managing the house lives there all the time?
He lives there,
Yeah.
but they're not expected to be on site 24/7.
Right, but so if he, on average, if he was home, most of us are home at night, right? So he's there.
Yes.
If there's conflict between two people, or if there's somebody's like, my door's broken, or somebody's hanging around outside, is he going to walk out and say, hey guys, do this, do that, do the other thing?
Yeah, that's exactly. The overnight person, the house manager person, not the case managers, not the treatment team, but the house manager, their job is just that, like basic rules stuff. Like, how do we keep our house functioning well, safe, and all is going smoothly? Sure. Of course. I want to double check myself on right to go into the room. I believe so as the landlord, but I don't think it can be just impromptu anytime. There's inspections. Yeah. Yes. Yes. You can search their room. You can't search a person, but as the landlord, yes, but with notice. And I don't want to speak incorrectly. Like, there are legal steps around that. So, but yes, that absolutely happens. And like, again, it's pretty hard to live in a small living quarters with other human beings and not be aware if somebody's engaging in behaviors they're not supposed to engage in. And so that's been our experience. In a house of 5 people, it's going to be pretty obvious if somebody's doing something they're not supposed to be doing.
And so how does this look different than traditional affordable housing?
So it's the supportive services part that's different. So when people move into, let's use like the artist lofts as an example, that's just affordable housing. So the only thing that's required to happen there is a subsidy of people's costs. And that subsidy depends, it's a voucher and it depends on their income, and it makes their rent affordable relative to their income. Beyond that, there's some services available, but it's not supportive housing in the way that permanent supportive housing is supported.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the nice things about working with a larger organization like AMI that has multiple houses all over the place, is they have the ability to sort of backfill and support in various ways. I'm never going to say never, because things happen. But generally speaking... So they're not paid 24/7. They're paid to be there, to live there. Basically, they're paid to live there and be there in the evenings and nights, and they pay rent to be there. So it's their home as well.
Okay, let's go to the next question about, is there data to support the success of these kinds of projects, including crime rates and impact on property values?
Yeah, there's a lot of data about permanent supportive housing, a lot of studies. We'd be happy to post those. I'll add those into the frequently asked questions, some of the links so that you can read some of the studies that are out there. A lot of them really focus on reduction in crime, reduction in hospital visits, things like that.
Okay. Okay. Well, okay. We'll get to another round. Well, no. We're gonna get to another round, and I'm gonna come back to you. We're gonna get to another round. Keep me to it. We just want to make sure that we get through all of these here. Are others welcome to visit the house, and how will the presence of people not in the program be managed?
So there are rules about visitors. Those rules are, number one, visitors have to follow all the same rules as people who live there. If they can't follow those rules, loitering outside would be not following those rules. They are not allowed on the property, and the lease is very clear about that. Similarly, people can have overnight visitors a limited number of times in a month. And overnight visitors might be your boyfriend or girlfriend. Like, you cannot have somebody move in with you. You cannot have friends stay with you. Those aren't allowed at much stricter levels than those of us who live in our own houses. We can have boyfriends, girlfriends, friends stay with us, whatever. Not so in permanent supportive housing.
What about defensible space and just maintenance of the facility?
That's, again, I feel like a strong suit for us. We are committed to keeping our properties in accordance with what's needed in that neighborhood, and defensible space is absolutely a part of that. And so
does the county pay for the services to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
It's part of the ongoing, part of our financing of a house like this is looking at deferred maintenance costs over time and making sure that we have the resources.
All right. And what about, are there other homes in the community being considered beyond Hope Ridge and this grant? In general.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Here's the. I'm just being told by Tom, our AV guy. The big problem with you shouting stuff out is it's not getting on the recording because you don't have a microphone, and we want to make sure. So if we can make sure that we just to the format, I'll get to you and we will be here as long as we need to be here. So are other homes in the community being considered beyond Hope Ridge?
So in the specific, no. And personally, I hope to not do another project like this in Truckee for a long time. No, just kidding. But more importantly, the big picture vision of homeless services, back to that picture, and if you read the homeless action plan, yes, absolutely. Housing 5 people is not the end of our need in Truckee. That's just not enough. And ideally, what we found at the other end of the county that's worked really well is, again, a variety of houses and a variety of locations. And that's a way to meet a variety of needs. And I hope that we're a community that is able to create housing for all those that need it at every level. And we know we also need housing in the middle. We need firefighter and teacher housing. We need all kinds of housing.
Can I mention one thing?
Okay, now the next one.
Hey, David, can I mention just one quick
sure.
one? I think what you're asking maybe was if we fail at this attempt, will we immediately go and try and start identifying other properties? Right. And that was one of the flyers that was circulated. This is coming to a neighborhood near you. You're going to have a homeless shelter near you soon in your residential neighborhood. The TAC report, and I don't want to get too deep into it because both the town council and the county and others are going to everybody's going to get a community opportunity to hit that document. There's all kinds of layers in there about solutions, supportive housing, transitional housing, and others. It talks all about that. Warming shelters, day orientation services, and it's all lined out in there. My personal opinion is that if we fail at this, we're not going to need to have a conversation about supportive housing in the near future because it's going to be dead for a while.
Okay, we're going to skip 30 because we've covered that before. 31, how do you handle vacancies? And if I could add one to this, how do you know, when we've talked about success looks like stability, when stability is evident, what happens with the person who's there? So leading into the vacancy. Like if somebody looks like they're doing okay, but they're perfectly happy to live there, is there any process for them being removed from the house because they're okay, or how does that work?
Only if if they want that. And so a case manager might start working with somebody around like, hey, you're doing so great. Look at all these ways you're able to function independently. You don't need our supportive services anymore. Let's start thinking about what else you might want in a home. Maybe you actually would like to live by yourself in a studio, or maybe you want to live in a different part of town, or whatever it might be. So it's supporting people in the next step that's appropriate for them. And then how we handle vacancies past that, once we have an empty spot, back to that HMIS list, there's many people on the list waiting for housing of all different kinds. And so we're looking at who rises up on that list, who's been here a while, who has intense needs, complex needs, and who is going to be successful in this setting.
Okay, and then on the last one, I'm not sure if we got the question that was on the recording about how can this be a residential home when there is a house manager on site. Can you just briefly reiterate the answer to that so we have it on tape?
I mean, I'm not quite sure what to say to that other than because it's a house and everybody there lives there, and because it's been defined that way by the state and by the federal government. And so permanent supportive housing is considered a residential use of a house.
Okay, let's go out for another round as long as people are here. I'm going to start over here and then move this way.
To your ask about solutions, it seems like a lot of the concern is around kind of safety and just making sure that everybody, in particular families and children, feel safe. I personally feel safe by the restrictions on this, having a child at Discovery. That said, I understand why others might feel concerned. Are there any comps of something that's perhaps in between what you're proposing and like not doing this at all, which seems like the alternative, which I would prefer to not be the outcome? Like, is there a compromise in the middle where there are slightly more restrictions, slightly more, people on site on a regular basis, where we could still make this happen, but acknowledge those fears and get like a little bit closer to the safety concern that folks seem to have?
Okay. This side of the room, we're got somebody right here. Oh, sorry.
My heart rate just went up.
I'm coming to you next.
Hi, my name is Kim, and I'm a longtime Truckee resident. I've lived in many of the neighborhoods, and I understand the concern, and I really do appreciate that you're giving us the time to ask questions, to understand, and really get our heads around it, because it's been a quick process. But with that said, I've also worked in nonprofits and our schools for almost 30 years. We have a lot of families that are struggling, and the cost of living continues to go up. And if you were to go look around this room and we were to be honest and raise your hand, like how many of us have struggled or has a loved one who's struggled, currently might be struggling. And so I just want to put out there, not that we're trying to shame, but like when we talk about people that are struggling and that are homeless and that are on disability, who have mental health issues, who are on substance abuse, it doesn't mean they're a risk to society. It does not mean they're going to attack anyone or hurt anyone. It means they're struggling, and more times than not, they're going to hurt themselves. And I pride myself of living in Truckee for so long and being part of this community that looks out for each other and really assumes positive intent. And when someone's struggling, we're there for them. And I hope that's something that we can all keep in our hearts too as we have this conversation.
Awesome. Did you come up with something?
Not yet, but I can't beat that.
As soon as I walk away, you're going to come up with something.
I'll be sure.
Okay.
I promise.
I wanted to talk about the acquisition of private property. I think there's a lot of people who are in the middle, just like Phoebe said, struggling to make ends meet in the working community. And it's just concerning governmental bodies acquiring residential property, especially when people in our community are having a really hard time finding affordable housing, either to rent or to buy. Can you please outline your panel's discussion on how Nevada County's acquisition of residential properties in Truckee could negatively impact the availability of real estate and real assets to Truckee residents who live and work here in our community?
Okay.
And just to comment off of Megan's response or comment is they're asking the individual who works 20 hours per week at $18 per hour to also pay $900 per month in rent. I don't think that that's sustainable, and that individual is going to be able to afford that. So if that could be a reconsideration as well.
I want to reiterate a little bit of like confusion that I have around the decision nodes and milestones that we have to making this decision. So like, what is the actual process by which the vote to apply for this grant will occur or will not occur? How do we inform that decision other than this Q&A? And what are the processes that we get, like either a vote on this or some sort of say other than this venue right here today?
Sorry.
That was a great start to my follow-up question, which I thought I heard Hardy say that a deadline for this decision is this coming Tuesday. Is that correct? On February 11th, it has to be either yes, we're going to go forward with this.
It's one trigger step in the process. It doesn't mean the house is purchased. It just means that we're going to. I'll answer the question.
Right. I'm just because I feel personally as the next door neighbor of this facility, because that's what you called it over and over again in our conversation that we had on January 17th. And I found out about this on January 15th because my neighbor was kind enough to stop by my house and tell me about it. And I'm literally 20 feet away. So, and I'm not afraid of these people because I work with them all the time as a public defender and actually really severely mentally ill people. And I've been a public defender for 25 years. The way this has gone down with no outreach or opportunity to be heard in the neighborhood, and I feel extremely rushed and overwhelmed by trying to get all this information to understand what's going to go in next door to my home where I live. So I would like more time. And if that means that this project doesn't go through because there's not enough time to be educated, then I'm sorry. But it impacts everyone in my neighborhood.
I did your ad in the fall brochure.
Oh, thank you. I loved it so much.
David, please, just a quick interrupt.
Yeah.
Is that mic been left off on the podium? Because I'm not getting anything from over there.
Mic off on the podium?
Is the mic off on the podium?
Hardy,
Hardy.
mic off on the podium.
Is the mic off or on?
Could we leave it on, please?
Mic on?
Yeah, we're just trying to figure out who's going to answer questions, that's all.
Oh, I don't know if this is a comment or a question, and this has been really good for me, and at the same time, it's really challenging because I was really shocked and surprised at first, and I didn't know what to expect. You know, all those fears, whatever, crossed my mind, and then also, and I appreciate all that has been answered, and I'm feeling better about it in some ways, but I'm going to call it selfish. I mean, I appreciate all the people who, Kim and everybody who's going, I'm for this. But part of me is sitting here going, okay, when my husband and I got married, and this was a dream of us to purchase our home, which was built in 1968, and my dad gave us $50,000 to purchase, to help to the down payment. We would have never had it, which we paid every penny back. And we have made all these major improvements to the house because there's no way we could have afforded something new. And kind of going off of what Megan's saying, it's not about stopping this program. For me, it's about redirecting it to a place. I mean, when I started out, I lived in a studio apartment. That was beautiful for me. I had my neighbors next door, whatever it is. And it's kind of sometimes, I'm going to sound selfish, but it's a little bit of a hard pill to sit there and go, shit, I paid this much money for this home, and we have county money that's spending how much money on this home and is only housing 5 people, when I feel like we can do better. We can do better for our hardworking citizens to be able to purchase that single family home and then put in place a beautiful thing like I talked about, the Dream Center that was down there, or something like the Brown Bear. Well, it's a multi-unit thing. You have your space, but you also have your community. It's a better source of our funds. And I mean, part of me feels like, I'm not expecting to go live in Martis Camp. I would never, ever, ever expect that. And I just feel like just it's still a little bit. I'm just gonna tell it as it is. It's a little bit still hard for me to get around it. I want to contribute and I want to help out, but I just feel like that's just not the best use of our funds.
David, one last thing. Sure. JD again here. So we just finished, a lot of you participated in this. We just finished collecting goods for the LA fire victims and loading semis full of stuff going down to the homeless with Councilmember Henderson from the town of Truckee. And when she went, I asked her to tour the LA Dream Center because they have a transitional house facility there. And I understand that's 8 million people and we're 16.8 or whatever today. But the bottom line is success comes from giving you the tools to get there. And the transitional center had vocational training. It also had on-site as well help. Everything was in one place and it was one nice place to make it happen. I know that we're a small community, but there's another possible project too at old CHP site too, where we can emulate that and be part of this. There's solutions to this. So, look to your council members, look to people who've toured them, look to all these people, family members back there that worked in them. We need help because I'd have never got to where I'm at today without it.
Did you have a question? Okay. Okay.
So I keep hearing how advantageous this is for those in need, but I feel like we're setting them up for failure. I look at how hard I work to remain in this community as a contributor and all the money it takes for me to live a pretty standard life. I'm not Marta's Camp. I'm not Gray's Crossing, but you're setting people up in this community that will never have the ability to support the affluency that is growing in this community. And I think you're setting them up, you're putting them up on this pedestal only to fall farther. And even when you go back to the Donner Party, even the Donner Party saw they didn't have what it took to stay here. They didn't have the services and everything needed to stay in this community. So what did? They moved to the community that provided the services and future opportunities for them to thrive. And that's exactly what they did when they left.
With the affordable housing that's going on downtown at the Artist Lofts and some of the other ones, is it the reason why these folks aren't offered those beds or those units because it's in the wrong lane, the wrong funding? That's the question I have. That you have these are brand new buildings with resources that are close by with all the things that these folks apparently need. So that's my question. Why aren't we implementing the existing buildings that have been built up for the assisted living folks? You get my point.
I echo all the concerns of my fellow Armstrong residents and neighbors, and I just also wanted to ask, this sounds like a purchase of the home would be something, we're calling it permanent. We're hoping for success. If this is not successful, what does unsuccessful mean? What does that look like? What is the contingency plan? Who is accountable? We talked about if there's disruption, residents can be removed from the housing. But what's preventing another disruptive resident from being put in place? And if this continues to be a problem, does this house remain in perpetuity as long as funding is applied if it's not being run in a way that our residents and community feel like it's actually, in harmony?
Okay. Should we go to some answers?
I have one quick comment, if I could.
Sure.
The gentleman that spoke about Artist Lofts, I can comment on that, why the homeless were not put in there. They were originally, and it was a failure because there was nobody to support them. Now, Artist Lofts and Coldstream has life skill people come in, is what they're called, and they help them with housing, they help them get whatever they need. But originally, they did not have those supportive services. That's why it failed. Okay. They had free rent for a year, and they blew it because they had nobody to support them.
Okay, thanks. Now let's go to the questions. Is that number 33 where we're starting? Okay. Are there any compromises between this and nothing? If there were more restrictions to help address safety concerns. I think if I remember that correct, it was like, if this doesn't work, is nothing our only option?
So I wouldn't say there's nothing, but I will say like there's a lot of competing needs. Like the funding has a lot of restrictions attached to it of how you can run the housing that you pay for with that money. And then cost is the other reality. Like I said earlier, most of these houses we don't staff at all, and they function really well. We are proposing to staff this house overnight. And when I say don't staff at all, supportive services happens during the daytime, case management, treatment. But in terms of overnight support, typically we don't do that. We're proposing to staff this house overnight because it is our community's first try at permanent supportive housing and we want it to be successful. The cost of operating with more staff than that gets prohibitive pretty quickly. But I appreciate the idea and I think it's worth us continuing to think about, are there other creative solutions to think about there?
Okay, before we go on, if the folks that are standing in the back, we've got a lot of chairs up front now. If you want to sit, you're welcome up closer. I'm not entirely sure I understand the second part. If there were more restrictions to help address safety concerns, who asked that question? Who remembers that?
I think it was asked in the context of like the compromise idea. Like she said, I support this, but I also understand the fear people have. Is there something in the middle we can do to sort of address that fear? And I think the things she threw out were like, more rules about drugs and drug testing or better staffing. And so I think, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Like there's some rules that we can't cross. We can't drug test people. That's not one of the options. The staffing model is something we can continue to think about and look at.
Okay, please outline how government acquisition of properties has impacts on Truckee residents' ability to purchase homes.
Yeah, I mean, purchasing this house absolutely takes a house offline that somebody else could purchase. So this is 6 people in a house that's being purchased and used for housing people that have these needs for support. There's also a need for additive projects, like somebody mentioned the old CHP site. I don't know if that was you, JD. And the Pacific Crest Commons project that is coming is adding units to the community, and it does include supportive units as well, in contrast to the artist loft. So yes, this house would take 6 bedrooms offline, and there are projects coming that add bedrooms as well.
Okay, what is the actual process by which the vote to apply will occur or not occur, and how do we inform that process other than this evening? Follow-up, is February 11th a decision point?
Yeah, I'm gonna summarize the process for us. Right now, the decision to apply for a grant has been made, so we've authorized staff to apply for that grant. There's technical documents that ratify that going to the Board of Supervisors on the 11th. That's Tuesday. We have a fork in the road there. If we apply for the grant, it doesn't mean that the project's going forward. It just means that we've applied for the grant. So in some period of time after that, it could be 90 days. We don't know. The state of California may or may not award the county a grant to purchase properties. At that time, we'll have, approximately another 2 months to figure out if that's the final property selected to apply the grant money. And at that point, we would have a project on our hands and that would be it. So we're making just a wild estimation that that's somewhere in the 5 to 6 month time frame before the project would be shovel ready to be purchased, and that's the decision. So the 11th is the decision to understand if this is going to be the ratifying the decision to apply for a grant. I do want to take a question here really quick, just because I want to get to the bottom of this. So can we give her the mic so I can understand what Allison's asking me?
Speak up too.
No, the folks at home need to hear.
Okay. So there was some information about originally the information we got was that people were going to be moved in on February 1st. And now we have an email that was circulated to somebody that said that the move-in date is pushed back 30 days. And now you're saying that it's a 5 to 6 month process. So you're planning on moving people in before the grant application?
We have halted the progress on moving people in and using the property at this time. That's as far as I'm going to go. That's all. That's where we're at. That's the only decision. This meeting was going to inform future decisions on using the house temporarily. We've leased it. We've used money to lease the property, so it's available to us. What's that?
$1,000.
That's not accurate. No.
But it says
I think you misheard. I caught that too.
yeah, it's the exclusive right and option to purchase agreement. It was signed on December 10th, or effective December 10th. The county paid Craig McDonald and his father $1,000 for this lease and option to purchase.
Yeah, I think after that, there's been a lease agreement perfected, paying market rate for the lease of the property.
Okay, why are we not using existing resources, artist lofts, or other options that we've got?
There's a wait list for every form of housing in this town. I can't speak with detail about how long that wait list is right now, but it's long. That's the short answer. And so there's, we heard a story that I shared earlier of somebody who is desperately waiting to get into one of those sites and has been waiting for a long time. And that's just the reality. And while people wait, they often sleep outside.
Okay, if this isn't successful, what does that look like? What happens? Who is accountable if the house is not working well and folks are continually disruptive or problematic?
Well, I'd say I'm accountable first as the director of the behavioral health department. This is a behavioral health program. Past that, the board of supervisors is accountable for holding me accountable. Ryan, my boss, is accountable for holding me accountable. So I think there's a lot of layers of accountability for this project, which I think is something that I hope helps community members feel a little bit more secure, because many houses don't have that kind of accountability that go with them. And I think, what is it? If it's not working well, it's people who are not able to maintain their behavior in the house. And what that looks like is an eviction process, which is nobody's first choice, to house somebody and then evict them. And again, that's why we work really hard on the selection stage to make sure we get the right people in there that we really believe will be able to be successful. But that's sort of the worst case scenario, is we're evicting people that we put in there and we're starting over with a new set of people.
Okay, on the last question here, clarify when people move in. Hardy, did you?
I think you clarified that. Well, there's no move-in date at this point. It will not happen before March 1st.
Okay, nothing before March 1st. Okay, remember when I said we could be here as long as you want? And do you remember when Shauna came over and whispered something in my ear? This is our last round. So think about your questions carefully.
Sorry, I interrupted you before. So if you do, it sounds like you'll probably get the grant, right? You've applied.
We haven't applied, and it's very competitive.
You said you applied.
No.
You have not applied. Okay.
People permission to apply. Are we at the same meeting?
Okay. All right. So if you get the grant for this house, it could still be moved to a different property. Okay. And will there be public conversation around that?
Okay.
If that's okay.
Hi, Reverend Claire Novak again. I just want to acknowledge that every one of us in this room has a relationship, not just to the issue of homelessness, but perhaps a personal relationship with the unhoused. Some may have been unhoused, had that lived experience. Some may have had somebody in their family who lived on the street, as I have. Some may work with people in this struggle professionally, or they may volunteer, the way we did at the Emergency Warming Center. I had that honor. And I want to say my experience says that built community. It brought people together not only in a warm space, but in warm relationship. And that people who had a roof over their head and a safe, welcoming place were motivated to follow whatever behavioral rules there were. And they became connected, and they built something good for this community that didn't exist before. Thank you.
Okay, what I'm going to ask, and I want you to be honest, is does anybody have a question or comment who's not already asked one? Just because as we're running out of time, I want to make sure other voices are heard. There's an unfamiliar face.
Hi, my name is John. I live in the community. I wasn't planning on speaking, but I've thought about this more than I probably should have and lost sleep over it. And what it came down to is I'm a father of 3, including a 12-year-old daughter. Sorry if I get emotional. 12-year-old daughter. And there's a few things that have really hurt me from, I applaud the county for what you guys do. It's not an easy job, but it feels like there's weird energy coming back. And I've done nothing but work my whole life, first generation college, to live in this town, and my hands, manual labor, and to see laughing up there at some of our questions, it hurts. And I'm sure you're nervous and there's some weird energy coming back. But all I ask, Commissioner, is when you're going to sign that, just please, if there's a 0.0001% chance you feel that, then this project probably is not right. It's not right for us. I'm sure it works in Seattle. I'm sure it works in Portland, Maine, where I'm from. I don't know if it's going to work here. And, I get a little bit too when you say, what's the solution? I would love to sit down and have a solution. I just got back from a conference. I haven't been home in a week. Like, that's how strong I feel about this. And, we elect you guys, we pay for you guys to help us figure this out. And for it to come the way it did, it didn't feel good.
Any other newbies before we go to the repeats? Okay, real quick.
Okay, thank you. Two-part question. Thank you so much for all the information you guys are giving us. It really does help. But my questions are towards further, if this were to go through, towards further implementation of scattered site permanent supportive housing, will they be as stringent if we're trying to home 30 people in our community? Some do have major issues. So if this project continues to go forward, what will those things look like? And what have happened to our homeless assets in this town? Where are the warming? What exactly has happened to those places for people to go?
Sorry, last comment. I just am looking for a little bit of clarification, and forgive me, Mr. Bullock, if I'm incorrect in this and what I heard. But at the beginning, you stated that you've looked elsewhere and looked at other properties for this project, but you had like 30 individuals say, this isn't happening around here, basically. But then you turned to Armstrong Track, and I can guarantee you there's hundreds of the community members that are saying no to the project in the way that it's being presented right now. So we're not saying no to the project. It's what's being proposed right now. It's a no. But if there's other resources available, other options, other availabilities, but you said 30 people, if I'm not mistaken, at different sites said no, but there's hundreds in the Armstrong Track area that are saying no at this time. Thank you.
See, I knew we'd get.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. More than anything else, I'd like it to be a helping hand, not a handout. And the milestones that are associated with that. I had asked originally, what does success, how do you define success? And you have to have milestones to make sure that it stays a helping hand. And some of the concerns from some of the people have been, I don't want it in my neighborhood. I don't want it next door to me. I don't want it close to me. I don't want it messing up my property values. And in all honesty, if it's done as a helping hand and you have significant milestones where you can demonstrate this is successful, not just stability, but true success, then a lot of those concerns, I think, will start going away, and it won't feel like it's just rammed down somebody's throat, if that makes sense.
That was a great segue, because I wanted to clarify what my question was intending to get at is how can we ensure that this is monitored in a way that we have a say if things go south? When will we be checking in to see if this is not a success? Are we stuck with it in perpetuity, or we keep putting in more residents and it keeps becoming a problem? What I want to know is, are we stuck with this if this goes through? And if it's not something that is going well in the neighborhood, what does that look like? Does the house end up getting, put back on the market, or what can happen, or is this something that's really going to be permanent for our neighborhood? That too, but yeah.
All right. Last question, and then we go into the final answer round. Now, for people who have their hands raised, is it good? I mean, is it a really good question? Because it's the last question. Who's going to get it? Do you want it? All right.
I just wanted to clarify, if this grant, we forget, the county gets this grant, is it just, we're just talking about this one property and just helping 5 individuals? What happens to the rest 25 homeless people that we have? And also, another question, has this manager been hired yet? And if the moving process is going to move forward until we have a house manager? Thank you.
Okay. All right. Is this going to be good? This is going to be good, right? This is going to be a really good one.
I would like to know if
Is this about the airport?
was community outreach done in the western part of the county for the support, the temporary shelters, whatever we're calling this, and that's basically my question right there. It seems that maybe there had been some feeling that maybe Truckee wasn't going to be supportive of this, so this whole thing seems very opaque. And I get a sense from what's been presented to us that there's this great sense of urgency, and there's a great sense of urgency for us because we just learned about it. And had it not been for J.D. Haas, would this have already been approved and would this meeting never happen?
All right. My job is done. All right, if you get the grant for the house, could it be moved to a different property? And if so, will there be public conversation about that?
So if we were to be awarded the grant, this round of home key, previous rounds of home key required that you have site control in an identified site before you apply for the grant. As we were moving through this process, the state very late in the game released the actual guidance for this round of home key, and it actually does have flexibility to swap out what that property is. I think based on all the feedback that's come in, like if we were to pursue swapping out a new property for that, that would have to be a community conversation, and we would lean into our partnership with the town and other stakeholders in the community. And like I would like to be shown the Truckee way and understand like how we can find a place where it would be appropriate for that grant.
If this were to go through and there's further implementation of scattered site housing, will the restrictions become less stringent? Also, what has happened to previous homeless assets?
I might need some clarification on the first part, meaning like, will there be less staffing or less rules? Right, got it. Okay. Yeah.
Can you restate the question for the mic?
Yeah, basically like is a concern that other folks who have more intensive needs are going to be placed in other houses somewhere else with even less support or services, essentially? Right. I mean, no, not, I don't see that happening. I can't say never. I won't be in the shop forever, all those things. But I think we feel really clear that we want housing to be successful. We want people to be successful in the housing. We want the houses to be successful in neighborhoods. And it does us and the people in them no favors if that's not true. And so we're not going to place somebody with really intensive needs in a setting where we think they're going to fail and where we think the neighborhood's going to fail. So.
Did you look like you were about to add to that, Hardy. Was that not true? Oh, okay.
I wanted to address one comment in the back. I don't know if it came out in the question.
Okay. What happened to the homeless assets?
Yeah, the homeless assets. Yeah, so Church of the Mountains could no longer host the warming shelter. When I was a planning commissioner, I approved the original warming shelter at that location through a lot of hardship and difficulty with our community understanding. And we got there and we had the warming shelter. Church of the Mountains wasn't able to host it there. And I just wanted to clarify, I think you are asking the question about, the 33 conversations I had. And I was specifically describing the process to site the warming shelter again. And so the conversation I'm describing is not relevant to the supportive housing conversation. So we went in the community for the last 18 months. I've been a champion for that warming shelter again. I did it 10 years ago and I still care about it now. And so I went to the Park and Rec Center. I went to the Veterans Building. We had community outreach, told by every organization and jurisdiction that you can't do it next to us. You can't use public buildings like the Rec Center, the Arts Building. That disappoints me as a public official. That's our tax dollars, right? That's our money. And so it really was troubling to me and we kept that going. Every time we had a site and we had a site assessment on a map and it showed all of them and we methodically worked our way through those conversations, they all ended with the answer is no. The faith-based community had no space. The recreation and park district had no space. The business community was not willing or able to allow them to be sited in certain areas. So we have no space. That's where the assets went. Our community is not willing to host a warming shelter or day orientation services or anything else. We're handing out meals in a vacant lot in CHP so that people can eat. Why did they close? Because they got kicked out. Oh, the church did not. The church did not have the staff members, and our community did not provide enough volunteers to staff those locations. So I just want to clarify. I know we need to move on. That's the conversation I was talking about, and I wanted to hit your piece in the back. I feel like I've been very respectful and probably stoic when I'm up here. If you caught us laughing or something, it was not anything related to this meeting or the individuals here tonight. I have the utmost respect for that. And your ability to articulate from a personal perspective what your number one priority is, protecting your children. That's my number one priority. It's all of our number one priorities. I would not stand here and put my entire reputation and my 35-year existence in this community on the line to pitch something that is dangerous to you, your family, or this community. It wouldn't happen. And I won't let it happen with the staff members that work for me behind me and down in Western County and all the people that go to support this project. So you have my assurance that it's going to be my role and our role to oversight that project, and it wouldn't be under consideration if we thought that that was a risk to you.
Okay. If things go south, does the community have the opportunity to weigh in on the determination that something has gone south? And if there is an agreement about that, how does the shutdown of this look like?
So my hope would be, like, if this project moves forward, that we have some kind of regular communication mechanism in place with the neighborhood. I think we put on one of the slides, we're open to weekly meeting for the first bunch of weeks, monthly meeting, obviously phone numbers, et cetera. So like ongoing dialogue of like, I think I smelled cigarette smoke in my backyard and my kids were playing there or whatever. Okay, great. Let's figure that out and make sure that doesn't happen. Like, how can we address small issues or big issues that come up along the way so that we don't get to the place of things really not going well? Is it a forever thing? No, nothing is. Like, absolutely worst case scenario, it just fails and fails and fails and the neighborhood's up in arms and you're at the board of supervisors saying this is not acceptable. The last fail-safe option is you sell the house and give the money back to the state. Like, that's a thing. But I have never seen it come to that. I would hope it never comes to that. I think there's a lot of steps we can put in place to avoid that happening, but it is not forever. If it's truly a failure, then it will not be there forever. That's the reality.
And if the county gets the grant and we're solving a problem for 5 people, what do we do for the others?
It's back to that spectrum of we need a whole array of options. we do need more. Like, that's the reality. I wish it were so easy to say, we just need one house for 5 people and we're done as a community. But it's not the reality. We need that whole spectrum that was on that map, and we need to find places to put it, to Hardy's point. We need to be a community that has solutions, not just opposition. And I don't mean that personal to anybody. I understand everybody's experience and feelings, but collectively, somehow, we have to be a community that has solutions to be able to move the needle on this issue. There is one other project in the works that we've talked about a few times, Pacific Crest Commons, that will help. But that plus this still doesn't solve the problem. And so there are no other specific plans. I know, again, flyers out there saying this is going to happen in every neighborhood. There's no funding for that. There's no plan for that. That's not currently in the works. But I think collectively we need to find a way to make it be in the works for us all to be able to have an economically diverse community that has resources for everybody.
Do we have a house manager? And if not, are we moving forward and before we get a house manager?
We are not moving forward without a house manager. I think the job was posted. I believe there's some really strong candidates, but I don't believe we're moving forward with hiring a house manager until we're sure that we're moving forward with having a house. But we will not move forward with putting people in the house unless there's a house manager.
Last question. Was there outreach in Western Nevada County? And I just to clarify, regarding the homes in Western Nevada County, or was there outreach in Western Nevada County regarding this home? For similar projects? Okay.
Yeah, so, excuse me, most of our permanent supportive houses in Western Nevada County are like this one, a residential dwelling that's consistent with residential zoning. And so there's not community outreach beyond door knocking and communicating with neighbors in terms of this is the number, this is what's going on, this is the number that you call. When we've had larger projects that do require a planning commission process, a change in zoning, a conditional use, then there absolutely is outreach to the neighborhoods. But when it's within a use, it's not like a public forum like this. It's more of the door-to-door, and I will acknowledge and own that got way ahead of us in this situation, such that we lost the opportunity for you to trust us on it. And so I apologize for that, and we will try to do better with our future projects.
Okay, that was it. You were spectacular. Thank you for being decent to one another and decent to the folks who were standing up here. I hope that this was helpful. I'm glad that I love the idea about the electronic submission, so that kind of carries the conversation on. So thank you for that. Hardy, do you have anything you'd like to say in closing for everybody?
Yeah, I've heard you. We have heard you. We take responsibility for the lack of information. We're standing here with an open heart, trying to understand how to best serve this community, not just the people in this room, but our entire community. And we're going to do what's right for the entire community. I represent you, and I'm honored to do so. My card is on the back. My number's on there. You can call me or email me anytime. I'll call you back.
Awesome. Ryan, thank you. Phoebe, thank you. Hardy, thank you. Allison, thank you. Where did everybody else go? Shauna, thank you. And where did Lewis go? Lewis is gone. Lewis was the MVP of the evening. Thanks, everybody. Mayor Zabriskie is still here, by the way, if you've got questions for him.